if you don't get down on your knees and suck ZywOo's dick yourself, like they're just gonna go right at you.
Why is he go for?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they say.
Right, it's going to be another episode of Snake Banter. Our guest for this one, your eyes do not deceive you. Apparently, I don't know if this is the end of Rocky IV or something, but actually, I could make a speech now. Apparently, we can all bridges can be fixed. Everything, it's possible for peace and harmony to exist, probably temporarily. That's just the nature of esports. But for now, we're going to have like sort of a ceasefire. People know I did that when the Animo episode 2. We're allowing a few people in past the moat. They're now allowed to enter into the city area and be citizens of this place with limited rights, but we'll see expanding that in the future. The key thing is this. Here's the thing, Strike. I'll explain it this way, mate. One of the problems in esports is, especially back in the day when there was way less money and way less opportunity, everyone famously, it's actually the reason why a lot of the people, the joke is who I'm actually like friends with now. At the time we were like rivals and enemies even 10, 15, 20 years ago. Back then everyone was super protective and I would say it was a very cliquey space in the scene. And so your problem is this. In theory, you didn't do anything crazy. You just got caught up with the wrong gang. You were in with this bad group from the Balkan region called the HLTV.org crew. Not my crew. I was sort of a rival crew. And me and Richard were off in our own little world. And then basically, you didn't necessarily do anything directly. You were just trying to like rep your set, as the kids would say, which was HLTV in this case. And they had the long-going beef with me. So even though actually my beef, as I think is pretty clear, and these people would know this to the day, are with Peter, the game will restart in 1 second, and Nomad. Peter one's just over some like minor disagreement about the game. But if anyone knows the way the CS nerds are, yes, you thinking that this player config is better than Magisk is the end of the world, aka sectarian divide, that civil wars must be fought over. That's just being nerds in the game. We all know that. We all know what happens when people get ranked third who should be ranked second in a HLTV top 20. That is the end of the world. That's the most egregious war crime ever committed, and the person can never be forgiven or redeemed for doing so. But the key thing is this. Now, we've moved past those days. The Bloods and the Crips have done their handshake. They've agreed to have a ceasefire. In this particular case, Striker's not even in that gang anymore. It's his gang now. Actually, the other guys moved out the city. Now it's Striker's gang. And maybe in the new era, who knows, I've appeared on an episode of HLTV Come here. By the way, one of the highest viewed ones, but there are a lot of pro players and shit. But anyway, don't need to get egotist. I'm just saying that did happen. The point is, he's even doing events with Richard Lewis now. Somehow, here's the thing. The world is healing, Striker. The world's healing, bro.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the videos that you just released, I don't know, like a week ago, a couple of weeks ago, you kind of gave me a compliment. I don't know if it was a compliment or not a compliment. You know, apparently I'm growing on you now. It's kind of crazy. Like, it's so much new stuff happening.
Yeah, and I'll also say now, by doing this episode, I can no longer, I'm going to retire that joke. I can't anymore say you're one of the two people that I don't listen to on HLTV Confirmed, because if so, then why did I invite you to this show? Doesn't even make sense. Exactly. Yeah, listen, listen, I can't lie. Prof's still in that group, but you know what? There's only one person now I don't listen to. I listen to
okay.
You know the way I'm out. Listen, I'm not an open amnesty,
always be a shot.
Yeah, listen,
always a shot.
It's not a total amnesty. We're gradually letting people through the vetting process. We'll see how it works out for him. Anyway, let's get into it. So obviously, we actually now like to lead. We're all clickbait now, bro. We all just social media influencers. So we're leading with the spiciest take. And will you believe it or not, this is how you know it is a new generation, gentlemen. Because actually, Striker brought the spiciest take, and it is his ugly point. So Striker, what ugly point could be so spicy from you? The show begins with it. What is it?
All right. Yeah, this is very on brand. And, you know, it's nothing to do with the fact that I'm on this podcast, because I've actually said this before in the past, just maybe not so pointedly, you know, not directed specifically. But my ugly point is the fact that ZywOo's fan base, or the vocal minority of it, has honestly become one of the worst, if not the worst, of all, in terms of just being very unreasonable, just taking everything way too seriously, and then just being very protective of their favorite player. You know, that part I understand, but so many conspiracies that are coming out of it, I don't. There's like so many layers to it where no matter what I say about ZywOo, I could be praising ZywOo, and there's still going to be 10 replies under that tweet saying, how hard was it for you to say that? And you're like, jeez, fuck, like I can't even say anything good about this guy. Like everything I tweet about ZywOo just gets taken out of context, or just like gets kind of conflated as something negative, you know, and it literally doesn't matter what I say. It's always going to be them in the replies, and it's always going to be at least like 10 of them in the replies, even though almost nothing that I ever say about these cases ever gets like too viral or anything like that, you know. like the craziest part was, there's this one that I will bring up as an example, which was, so during the final, I can't remember which final, but it was like 5 rounds in, ZywOo was something like 15-0 or some shit. It was the one after Cluj. That would have been, I can't remember. I can't really remember the event, but there was a final that happened right after that where ZywOo was just going crazy. And so I tweeted something like a screenshot of the interview that he did in Cluj, where he was like, "I'm only going to let go of an MVP when I'm 30,
Yes.
And then obviously he lost the MVP in the end to Robs, right?
Oh, the Blast Rotterdam, I think.
MVP.
Yeah. I think it was Blast Rotterdam, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. I just couldn't remember the event. And then, ultimately.
So, by the way, you were obviously memeing with this. Like, the joke is you were just tying it to a recent thing he'd said. Yeah,
I was just memeing about it. And it was also like, yeah, he's not going to let one go because he just started this insane fucking final, right? And then by the end of the final, he slows down. Robs takes over, like this massive fucking final that Robs goes on, right, to take the MVP in the end. And people took it as if I posted it after we gave Robs the MVP.
Right. Okay.
And so people just like went crazy on my ass because they're like, how could you be like this? So yeah, it's literally like 20 tweets that I posted about ZywOo. They all have like several people just going back at me as if I'm just like a massive ZywOo hater,
By the way, beyond that, that's just a meme. Have you ever actually even had an edgy take on ZywOo? Like, for example, as far as I know, you are HLTV. You thought ZywOo was the number 1 player last year. You'd think they'd be on your side, bro.
That's the thing. We've even, like, if you look at the 3 MVP decisions before that were kind of close, the Robs one from Budapest would have been a close one, that went to ZywOo. Then there was one from somewhere in the early year as well. There was one Flamesy versus him. It was Cluj actually. It was Flamesy versus ZywOo, which was in our eyes very close, even though people didn't see it, and we like explained it like it was way closer than people thought. Still went to ZywOo. We gave ZywOo the number 1 when some people were like, could Donk get it as the statistical case for number 1, right? Like, there's been plenty of cases where I sided with ZywOo over the period of I don't know how many years since we've started doing this. And so, like, just these last couple of seasons, it's just gone kind of crazy.
By the way, the key frame in there, Maui, is he's not even saying they go mad when he says something. Essentially, if you just say anything, unless it's just like universal, he's 100 out of 100, crazy. Then they sort of attack you either way, as if you'd said something bad, right?
I mean, it's just never enough for ZywOo fans, really. They're just the most voracious fan base, which runs so contrary to them praising his humility, how humble he is. But the problem is that the fans, given that their superstar is so humble, doesn't build himself up, they need every pundit and talking head to speak on his behalf because ZywOo doesn't say enough himself. I mean, they basically need us to be his mouth because he's not going to say any of this stuff himself. So I think the funny thing is about this for me is that I was in the crosshairs of ZywOo fans for a very long time. But the problem is that this year, to me, ZywOo has just played himself into a form that is undeniably world number 1. Or I'd say it's very difficult for me to even take Donk's case in this year versus last year. And so I think I've actually left the crosshairs of ZywOo fans, but now I just see their comments on Launders. They're so vicious to Launders now because Launders kind of had one of those sort of, tertiary angles where he's kind of taking down ZywOo a peg because he says he doesn't have X Factor. And whether or not I think Launders' take is good as a different aside. I don't think that's what X Factor actually is important for, or what it means. Like X Factor is more for the 6th man on the bench to me than a star player. But regardless of that, it's just that the way that they're going at him now, dude, they'll just like trash his casting along with the way, like the X Factor take and everything. They are so ruthless to all broadcast talent and any kind of personalities in the space. If you don't just suck, Exactly. That's what they say. That's what they say every time. I'll reiterate this. I have nothing against ZywOo as the player. I have nothing against ZywOo as
I think you're saying this as though you're in like a deposition in Congress or something. I know, like, it's ridiculous.
The fans are the worst. No, the fans are downright the worst. I mean, dude, we get harassment from other fan bases, especially ones from other particular countries. And those ones can be extremely rude. They can say a lot of incredibly hurtful things. Ones where you just have to block. Like, it's not worth entertaining it in any way, shape, or form, or even let it. Like, honestly, the people, especially around the snacks era of G2, were like throwing like Polish slurs at me on a regular basis. But like, that's I don't know, in a weird way for myself. I think it's okay if somebody says something like you're like someone from Central or Eastern Europe says like your mother's a whore. I'm like, that's a joke I heard on Saturday Night Live. Like,
are you really?
That's not really funny to me.
This is a mad angle.
It's just a joke. Are
you actually taking the case that when they're like, "I kill your mother," you're like, "He's just a mad fan," but then when they're like, "Your analysis is trash," you're like, "Hey, that's hurtful." Like, why is that your standard?
I just think that one is like is just saying a generic insult from the 1990s.
True.
For me, the other one is like, hey, like, you have maybe like an ounce of critical thinking and you're using it in a very bad way here. I mean, this is going to reset the counter in our YouTube comments as it does every single time. That just someone says days or podcasts since Snake and Banter has mentioned ZywOo fans, because we do it an awful lot. So I think it's actually pretty funny Striker brings it up.
Yeah, I was honestly trying to come up with a lot of different ones. I just couldn't come up with one that was better than this. So, you know, that's how bad it is.
Also, I know what you mean, Maui, though. Like, this is actually one area where people... This is how you know someone's like 16. When they actually do the one like, "Yeah, fucked your mum." Right? You do understand the way like a man works, if you're actually a man, is you just think of that as an abstract idea and go, "What? It's not even a good joke, is it?" You don't actually start imagining your mother like, "Oh my God," and then she met up with this guy. You're not doing that, are you? It doesn't really hurt. I know what Maui means. That doesn't actually sting. Whereas actually, low key, them just saying like, "Everything you say is wrong and sucks." Like, that is about the closest they can come to hurting your feelings, because you even know they don't totally mean it. In fact, actually, I'll address like almost anthropologically. Look at the fascinating behaviour. Look at the creatures of the ZywOo. I'll do that, right? I'll give you like a real reason as to why I think they do it, because I've actually observed this for myself. When I get into these bizarre things online politically, where I'm supposed to have said something crazy, bro, no one's ever got any receipts. Like, there's not a single. I always say this. There's not a single recorded second or screenshot of me on the internet ever in 25 years saying a slur, for example. It's never been got. No one has that screenshot. If they did, by the way, you'd have seen it 7,000 times. Like, it doesn't exist. So, but what I had to learn was when people say something like "you're racist," they don't actually mean they caught me doing something. What they mean is I just have that vibe. That's what I feel about you. And so because they feel that way, one, you can't prove otherwise. Like, I can't change how they feel, can I? And then secondly, if they feel that way, they just feel that way, bro. What they basically mean is like, but you secretly wanted to say that. That's what they sort of imply. So I think actually, as we're pointing out in this case, it's not even that you have to have said something that edgy, because actually, of the three of us, I'm obviously the one that said fuck tons of stuff against ZywOo, or at least perceived to be, because obviously I just will literally say like, "You're a ZywOo dick sucker," and s1mple's better shut the fuck up. Like, I don't do the like, I respect and revenge. I don't do the disclaimer. So you'd think, right, that only I would get all the like people saying it. But as pointed out, at different gradations in this chat, they just do it the same to everyone. I can tell you, by the way, I've seen unreasonable fan bases in other games.
Oh my God.
And it's so bad in League of Legends, for example, because in their game, right, they actually had two teams in League of Legends in Europe. One's from Spain, MKOI, Movistar Riders, basically, and the other one's from France. It's called Carmi Corp. And they also are not only super active fan bases, they're like completely nationalistic because they're either Spanish or they're French. And I can tell you, if you are like the French girl who works on the LEC called Law, you can't even praise the MKOI, the Spanish one, for winning the game, because that's perceived as like you're biased in their favour. And if you ever like say that the French team won the game again, then you're hating on the Spanish one. Like they're even worse on it. So I think it's the same thing. It's almost like they're just looking to be offended, and then they just find anything to latch onto, and then they always take that thing and treat it like it was whatever's really bothering them. Like in this case, by the way, what's really bothering them is things like ZywOo doesn't win every single MVP ever. He doesn't get to be number one every single year. That's obviously what bothers him. By the way, I get that. I get the idea that as a fan, you wish that was true. Like, I wish Liverpool won the Premier League every year. The difference is I wouldn't hate on the commentator going, "and Manchester City wins again," but you hate him. Why did you? Like, I would understand reality at that point in time as less my grasp, wasn't it? I've just got to live with the fact that what I want to be true didn't happen. The weirdest one ever, I think, for HLTV, I always say this has to be the Nero one. I understand things become community memes. So there's this meme that he's a m0NESY fan, and he actually altered the way they did the arena rating to make m0NESY better, right? Here's the two things on that, guys. One, why didn't he bother last year then? Why isn't he helping m0NESY out then? Because, by the way, m0NESY needed the help last year, bro. He wasn't in top 3, was he? And then secondly, the worst part about that is you've done the thing you do to me and Maui, where you confuse my opinions and Maui's and tell Maui he thinks something that I think, or vice versa. Similarly, I'm the one who's the fan of m0NESY and thinks he should be better than ZywOo. He isn't at the moment, but I think he should be. Nero was never even that guy. That wasn't even his shit ever. He was just essentially like the fall guy whose face just became the fucking face of this anti-ZywOo campaign, according to their fans. Yeah. As far as I know, he's not even that big a fan.
You mentioned that number 4 case, from last year, when we didn't even put him number 3. You know what people said when we put him number 4, right?
What?
Which was basically that we did it to combat this idea that we are.
Right. You can't. The problem with that, Striker, is when someone goes to that level of paranoid delusion, you can't beat them. Because I'll give you a mad example. There was a case where on some conspiracy. I'll give you an example. Right. There's a famous conspiracy case. I won't say the particulars because you might know this is an edgy one. But it's the idea that someone in the world sees a certain conspiracy everywhere, and then they get to heaven. And when they get to heaven, they're at the pearly gates and they see St. Peter and they say something like, "Oh, what happened with all that conspiracy thing?" And he goes, "What conspiracy?" And they go, "Oh my God, is this how deep it runs?" And the idea is, even the proof it wasn't the case must show that everyone's in on it. That's actually, that's the last thing I'll say on this topic. That's probably the worst thing about the ZywOo fans, is they actually have built the most all-encompassing, full spectrum. At this point in time, guys, forget Nero changing the arena ratings. You guys have to actually believe, the demiurge of this reality, the person who made the simulation is fucking with the simulation just to fuck with you and ZywOo. Not anything else. That's the ultimate reality of, forget the Illuminati. No, the biggest conspiracy ever is everyone secretly pretends ZywOo is a tiny bit worse than he is. Because I know what Maui means. I've actually seen this happen a lot with really nutty fan bases online. It's always the ones who are in GOAT discussions, by the way. Because they don't just treat the player like GOAT means best player ever. They actually treat it like GOAT means this player is perfect in every single area. So I always make the joke, what ruins all discussions in sports is you'll have these actually semi-nuanced discussions on those talking head shows in America, where you'll say something like, who was the best scorer in the NBA, right? And now when you use the word scorer, the slang of scorer usually means your whole game is just scoring the ball, or you're really pure with how you do it, or you got all the most techniques to score. So what will happen is LeBron James technically has scored the most points in NBA history, but if you know how basketball fans and hoop heads work, he isn't traditionally considered a scorer in the same way. He's more of an all-around threat who does the triple-double and he passes a bit. But he's not I score every single time. If you say that, right, to a fan, they'll go, "You must hate him. He has to be the best scorer because he has the most points." And it's we're sort of just arguing over words here, mate. We're not even getting to the central point. So I always make the joke that to that type of a fan, you can't ever tell them anything against their player. My joke is, if they were a Michael Jordan fan, you could just say a fact Wilt Chamberlain was 7 feet and Michael Jordan wasn't. And they'd be like, "No, he isn't. Michael Jordan's also the tallest player ever." That's my joke. It's at that point in time, everything's a diss. And then also, the weirdest part about this is I agree with Maui too. In a weird way, I also think they have to be more vicious though, because ZywOo never says shit about any of this. Even the thing we've all heard about, that he was bad about number 3. He didn't say that on camera though, did he? He just sort of apparently said it to someone, and then someone said it behind the scenes at the HLTV awards or something. If he'd have just said it, brace me, I hate to even give this idea, but I just know he never watches stuff and spoil it. He does it for his own Twitter account. That's not him doing all those tweets. It never was. Here's what's sad. If you were ZywOo, here's how you tomorrow get insane fucking aura. Would technically also work for Mouse, but they're too pussy to do it. If ZywOo ever just did a tweet fuck Mauisnake and just did that, man, that tweet would have 10k likes, bro. I even made it Mauisnake, not me, by the way. Look, you can do it to me as well, but you have to understand. I think it's understood at this point in time. My brand's sort of anti-fragile. You would also, in doing that, ZywOo, make me actually a bit more famous. And do it to Maui instead. If you ever just say, "Fuck that Mauisnake," what does he even know about the game? Every shithead fan, even worse, every influencer, KRL, they'd all be quote tweeting, "Oh yeah, oh go off, King." They'd all be everyone would eat off that fucking social media post. Yeah. But he'll never do it, will he? And also, that's also the last thing to say is, bro, I can't confirm, because actually ZywOo was one of the only great players I've never spent any time with. I've never even had a private conversation with, because the era when he came up was the era when I stopped doing the events, and at the time he never spoke English. He literally did just stay with the French people in his team, and they weren't the ones I talked to. So I can't confirm this, but from knowing a lot of pro players, I doubt even he's as nuts as that, you fans. I bet even he behind the scenes, actually Donk's pretty fucking sick, and maybe he could be as good. I bet he'd have way more reasonable opinions than you guys know. So I also think, unfortunately, the fact he ever gives his opinion maybe makes these fans think he agrees with them and they're like doing ZywOo a favour. Like, ZywOo probably thinks you are all slightly nutty too, even though I'm sure he likes the money and attention and all that jazz, and the giant salary and all that. That is good too.
I think this is a good time for me to reiterate one point that I made before that also got really out of hand, because ZywOo fans actually clipped my stream out of context one time where I said, people were saying, oh, why are you in this match rooting against Vitality? Or I think they were playing, like, let's just say it was Spirit or something like that. And I said, okay, I mean, I don't dislike anybody on Vitality, but the thing that I really hate are ZywOo fans. And then the guy literally cut it right when I said ZywOo between that and fans. And so it was like, it basically had me saying, I hate ZywOo. And that was it. That was the clip. And that got circulated on the HLTV forums for probably like a year and a half, or like a year. I decided, okay, that's just gotten way. At first, I thought it was kind of funny that he decided to do that because it might bring some people to my stream. Then I was like, oh, people really think I hate ZywOo because this guy clipped one word out and just deleted all the context, essentially. And I think it's just important to set the record straight. That's why I bring it up here on a ZywOo fan hater segment. You know, I got to bring up the fact that ZywOo fan, they're just another level. They're another level of haterism. It's crazy.
Also, by the way, there is one last detail, which is you will never be forgiven for making the meme about the fucking air quality, even though, by the way, one, it was really funny, and two, in some fucked up way, it had an actual real correlation for a few years. Like, if you ever saw, like, you know, ironically, because Katowice doesn't have great air quality, that was the one event he kept failing. It's sort of true. Even though you meant it just to be funny.
They had to move it.
Yeah, of course.
No, two of my longest standing takes are about ZywOo, essentially. One is air quality, the second is cultural impact. And so people for the longest time were saying, ZywOo, I mean, the funny thing was, I think you brought it up before, Thorin, it was just that people at first were like, cultural impact's not a thing, it doesn't matter, who cares about that? Then he gets on the cover of a French sports magazine,
or whatever,
everybody is like, cultural impact, this is it. This is finally cultural impact. It's like, you just told me for 4 years this didn't matter. And now it does? Okay.
No, the joke will be, get ready, by the way, that's even how we'll end the segment. The same fans who weren't just arguing with Launders, you're wrong, and he does have the X factor. They were just like, but what even is an X factor? Can you quantify it? Can you pin it down? Can you scientific? I'll bet that, and like, since now he actually is a man X factor, even though I know what you mean, Maui. X factor Launders is when like the third best player on the team fucking carries like flames and then he gets to win the tournament, and that was the X factor. You mean the It factor, you idiot. What you mean is he's just not like the greatest superstar ever who does all the cool, he doesn't do aura shit. That's what you actually meant. Well, anyway, we know what Launders meant. The problem is, now because the joke is he does do all that stuff, they'll just go, see, he does have the X factor. Say, we just said that didn't exist too. Also, by the way, I'll just put this out there. Here's why, in a weird way, you ZywOo fans are the ones who actually underrate ZywOo. Because, bro, you actually treated him like since 2019 he was a 10 out of 10 and he already maxed out every single quality. But can't everyone see he's gotten even better this year and for the last few years? Like, you actually didn't allow your player any space to grow. You already said he was perfect, but he isn't. In fact, the coolest thing is, if you actually shut up and listen this year, everyone on this show has him as number one, and we actually think he's better than Donk. Like, and no, sadly, I understand Striker's nailed it already. We can't escape this trap. We are in like an episode of Black Mirror, because you have to understand they're now going to do that thing where they go, well, you have to share that now, otherwise you'd seem biased. So we can't win. We can't ever win. Like, essentially, this is like where you do the apology when you get cancelled, and they go, you're already apologising because you were caught. It's like, what can I do? Go back in a time machine. Like, yeah, you can't win. Listen, we lose again. They win. It's heads I win, tails you lose. That's what it is with ZywOo fans, but it's all good. Anyway, and by the way, the saddest thing of all as well is he's also fucking really good this year. There's nothing to complain about, but you're still going, stop with the tweets already. Stop. Anyway, Naui, what is your ugly point?
My ugly point kind of reaches hits a similar note. It's just that I'd say that not on ZywOo hate. It's on fans downplaying kyxsan's achievements. I feel like the recent swarm of people that just wanted to tear down kyxsan, mostly in the wake of him signing for Falcons, was pretty perplexing to me. I think the one thing that I always have to do, though, when I think about any fan perceptions of players, is recognize 80% of the people writing comments probably started watching in the last year and a half, 2 years. So with that in mind, I think that it's important to set the record straight about how much good faith kyxsan has earned as an in-game leader, because a lot of people think that he's always had stars and he always underperforms and never delivers, and it's like, I have to think you guys started watching in the last year, 2 years maximum, because that was just never really the case for me. I mean, FaZe themselves
wasn't the case in the last 2 years either.
No, like, I mean, even the major grand final runs that he went on with some of these rosters were totally unexpected. I mean, the one that most recently happened at Budapest, it really is for this community sometimes so, like, we've actually swung so far in the ring culture direction, unfortunately, where because kyxsan, even though he went to 3 major finals in CS2 with lineups that I'd say one of them was favored for sure, the Copenhagen one. But for the Budapest one, there shouldn't have been there. Winning a map off Vitality itself it should have been an accomplishment for him in that team with Jacob and the rest of the company. I feel like people see good players and the problem, it's almost like this. The problem is that because almost every FaZe player has aura and they do have cultural impact, everybody thinks that they're superstars all the time, even when they're in their down periods. For example, Rain, for me, was the guy that I would have probably cut from FaZe for 2 years. I'd say he was my number one player on the hot seat, and I thought there were probably 4 different instances where they should have probably moved on from him, and then they finally did it. But then people will almost use Rain because he won that one major MVP as like he's been a superstar this whole time. He's always been great, and kyxsan doesn't get the most out of him. Guys, I think there's a back and forth here that an IGL can also prop up a player and make them better in the server because they call good strategies, but it's also up to the player too to make sure that he does his job in a lot of different situations. And for me, Rain wasn't doing his job in 80% of the time in the last 2 years. I think he did show up for big games and everything, but to want kyxsan to win more trophies with a Rain that was, by the way, in Rain's most recent HLTV top 20 year, he had a sub 1.0 KD. Like that's such an absurd stat once you really get down to it, that he is supposed to, like, everybody's calling him a superstar, but then he doesn't even have a positive kill death ratio. That's like when you use LAN top 20 filters. So I think that what we've seen as people who have been following kyxsan's career for much longer is a guy that has actually gotten so much more out of pieces you didn't necessarily expect. I think 2019 is probably the year where you could most easily point to it and say 2 S-tier trophies, another grand final appearance, and he only had 2 players in the top 20, and they were at number 10 and number 12. I looked through other years. It's incredibly, incredibly rare. I don't even think for the last 5 years it's happened that any team has won 2 S-tier trophies or more with players of that ranking or worse. There was, of course, ZywOo when he was number 1 in 2019. Vitality was able to win off of the back of that. But again, it's like kyxsan kind of getting more out of pieces that are serviceable. Like, you definitely need like some HLTV top 20 players to win a couple trophies. But like, he's getting it done with players that are not in the top 5. Like, again, going back to now his 2022. The fact that, seriously, look at every player. Like, the revisionist history is so crazy about his 2022 that people think that Rops was clearly... People will look back at that and say Rops was obviously the best lurker in 2022. It's like, he wasn't. He was probably like 4th. He was probably... If you actually look at HLTV's own nominations for Player of the Year through the HLTV Awards, and you go to 2022, the only other player that is up for a nomination is Rops for Closer of the Year, and he didn't even win the award. So Brokey wasn't on the top 3 for his category. Twistzz wasn't on the top 3 for his category. Rain wasn't on the top 3 for his category. So basically, for a team that won 0 superlatives other than IGL of the Year and Team of the Year, he was able to actually garner that award for Team of the Year. I think that is in itself so impressive when people want to say, oh, he always has superstars around him. And so I'm just here trying to set the record straight that kyxsan has actually, at 2 separate times in his career, overperformed for the pieces he had.
If anything, I mean, he always had X Factor players around him. Like, he always had the guys who would just be very up and down. Like, look at Mauisnake, that would be one example, of a guy who just had super hit or miss games, or even fucking Chris J, when he was part of that team, super like X Factor player, just very, very hit or miss And even if you look at Brokey is like the biggest example of that in the modern era, like let's say 2 years ago, Brokey, not the one that we're seeing now. That's much more missed than hit. So like it's more that he's always had players who can hit that ceiling, but they just don't do it consistently. And he just kind of utilized that to the best of his ability because he's the guy who thrives in chaos. So I 100% agree with this. I don't think he ever had a superstar lineup or even I can't even think of a time that he had a superstar on his team in the first place. Rops probably comes closest to that. But this is a guy who's, I don't know if you can call him a superstar considering the positions that he even plays. Like he needs the rest of the team to function so that he can be a superstar. So can you really be a superstar from that position? So I definitely agree that people are taking it a bit too far. For me, even it was like exacerbated by this whole drama that Sponge brought up a little bit. With the whole
leaving without telling
he left
them.
And he didn't tell anybody, and people took it as if like he never said goodbye or he never came to the players at all or things like that. When that's not even what Chad said in the first place. So like, and then people are like, oh, he's a backstabber and he's leaving FaZe. Bro, he's been the most loyal guy you could fucking imagine for the longest time, like for the FaZe organization. He only got kicked the first time. He would have stayed if it was his choice, probably. When he came back, he stayed there for whatever it was, 5 more years after that. So like he is the most loyal guy you could ever imagine, but like he had a fucking amazing opportunity that anybody in his position would have taken. There's no fucking player that would have not taken that position. So just like it was just way too far from some of the fan base.
No, I know what you mean on the Chad thing. Basically, the way fans saw that, and again, by the way, that's sadly the era we live in. They just saw the fucking headline, which was the quote, which is how you have to do the clickbait nowadays. But they never ever click and listen to the context of what he says before and afterwards. So if you just take it the way that looked like it's written, they take it like Karrigan is your dad, and one day he just woke up after fucking your mum last night, and then she woke up in the morning and he was just gone, and all his clothes were gone, and he never even told anyone he was divorcing her, and he's gone off with some fucking secretary from his work. That's what they treat it like. Even though in this scenario, even before I saw that actual quote, I just took that as he didn't tell them before he agreed with Falcons, and then he was like, look guys, I know it's fucked up, but like I've agreed basically to join them, I am leaving, here's all the circumstances, and like okay, then they're just not happy that they didn't get to know beforehand. Like I'm sure they didn't put it this way, it's implied by Twistz's response, he also did that thing of like woke up like, what the fuck, Karrigan's leaving, but I'm in FaZe. It was more like that. I took it as, they just wanted the courtesy, like, hey guys, I'm going to leave in a week or whatever. But the problem with that move is, if you know how moves like that work, sometimes they're like last second they can get revoked from the other side too. So by the way, think about it from the other side, guys. What if he goes, guys, this might sound mad, but I might be attending the major anyway with Falcons 2 days later. Oh, actually, that's not happening. We're still cool though, right? That also doesn't work, does it? Then it's like, well, if I know you were about to leave and then you stayed, like that's pretty awkward as well, isn't it? So to bring it all back, here's the real problem. I'll do the esports historian thing for you here. The real problem here is people have a really, really bad time for some reason in sports and esports of treating players as though this is a video game and everyone has stats programmed in that are static and they never change. Like, a year of FIFA, you can go back obviously and play that game now still, and whoever was good in 2018 FIFA is going to be good now. It doesn't update to the current stats. Like, they're just whoever they were back then. It's why famously, if anyone's played any of the football managers, everyone knows those like cheap players where they were like on a bad team, but they had like the good stats programmed in, and if you just go and buy them now 20 years later, they're still the best player because like that was the one that the game creator thought was going to be the next top player, they guessed right. So the problem is people do this with players anyway. Like, notice how it's not that anyone goes, I think Zonic in CS2 and Falcons is like kind of a fraud. They go, he was always a fraud. And you're like, well, that's even crazier. What the idea he like got away with it in Astralis and Vitality, but then he like now got exposed. But then also vice versa. If Falcons wins now, there'll be a Zonic fellow who'll be like, he was never a fraud. It's like, well, he's still pretty fraudulent in 24 and 2025, bro. Like, so my problem is just this. They've taken a really long storyline and they've just narrowed it too much at the beginning. If you look at the first years of Karrigan's CSGO careers in IGL, the TSM squad he had was already a really good set of players. Look, they weren't superstar players yet, but they were a good set of players. Like, that was one of the better talent cores you could have gotten, fully if it was comparable to like a Falcons type one now. In fact, so not quite as good, but like if you took that team over, you'd expect to have a chance to win now. Then obviously he did have the FaZe super team in 2018 where he got Guardian and all off. That on paper was the craziest super team ever. But after after that, as you guys have outlined, it wasn't super teams at all after that. Like, after that, you had to go and get Mouse. And I always remind this. The problem with the Mouse one is easy, Maui. People forget this. It's that the name value tricks you. So people forget that, like, back then, Woxic isn't like Woxic now has had even a career revival in Aurora. So now people know he's a top player. When fucking kyxsan got him, he was just the guy who used to carry on the international Hellraiser squad, which was like, essentially on that team, if he had the odd game he popped off, you noticed it. And if he didn't, you went, well, they're not even that good a team anyway. No one had any pressure on Woxic. He was never going to be a HLTV top 20 player. If he was, he'd have been 20th before he joined with kyxsan. When he got with kyxsan, yeah, he looked fire. He was mega, wasn't he? Like, I think if they'd have played together longer, they could have actually had a lot of success. It's why that rumour that he was going to join FaZe was kind of a cool one now. Like, I would have been down for that, like, reunite them, because it seems like he's a player that played with him. By the way, that's even why this take is whack. If anything, didn't I make this point 10 years ago? Actually, one of kyxsan's strengths is getting stars to play almost their peak level CS with him. It's why actually the names you guys are all mentioning, it's the same problem. People are taking players they've now seen with kyxsan be stars and go, he just got a star and he didn't do any of it. It's like, no, it's the other way around. So the example from Mouse, by the way, isn't even the Woxic one, it's the Frozen one. You see the name Frozen and go, oh, he had Frozen. 16-year-old baby Frozen, bro. And that was when he just spammed the Krieg all the time. That wasn't at all the player you saw in Mouse later when it was like on his solo career. And then now when he's been like the best player in FaZe for like 2 years, that wasn't that guy, mate. If anything, that was fucking nuts that he got that performance of him. He was like a 16-year-old kid at the time with fuck all tier 1 LAN experience. Then if you go to FaZe, Maui's nailed it. Bro, the FaZe one is the wackest one ever, because I always tell people this. I did a screenshot the other day. When he got the 2022 lineup, when he got Rops to come from Mouse to FaZe, right, here are the HLTV placings from the previous year for that core of the three musketeers of Rops, Brokey and Twistzz. So Frozen was, let me just check it here.
He didn't make it, I think.
No, sorry, not Frozen. I meant Twistzz was number 17 in 2021. Rops was number 18 and Brokey was number 20. So he had the number 17, 18 and 20 players of 2021, and then he took that core and had the best team of 2022. If in your brain that goes, he just had a stacked roster, didn't he? You're a moron. You're really slow mentally in the head there. It's the opposite. I'd even argue, by the way, I'll do the same thing for the other years he had. So then when you go after that, obviously later he got the lineup with Frozen, right? That was when the previous year Rops had his highest rating ever. He was number 3. He was number 3 in 2023. That was the one year he was awesome. Aside from that, Frozen himself was number 12 when he was with Mouse that year. And the rest didn't even make the list, by the way. They weren't even on the list for that year. So going into 2024, when he had the major finals, he was doing that with actually not even 3 HLTV top 20 players at that point in time. And if you go after that, by the way, you're getting fuck all. Like, by the way, when Elise joined, he was, 19th or something? He was, like, right at the bottom. I know, or 18th, I think it was. He was, like, 18th in 2024. So, again, he's not... They're making it sound like he's got the Falcons now, and he's getting Morrissey and Nico now, when they're already for years HLTV top 10, top 5, best players. They weren't. In fact, like I said, they got the cart before the horse, if anything, and these people would probably admit it. kyxsan's part of what made them the elite players we all think about now that are super fucking sick. And you nailed it on the 2022 one. It's even worse, because, bro, remember how the year began? So Brokey won the MVP at Katowice. Bro, before that, Brokey was nothing. He was just like a good player who had some prospects. In fact, we all used to even say, the impressive thing about Brokey isn't that he's a star player, it's that he sort of survived the era of all those old stars on FaZe when it was like Nico was the IGL and Cold Zero. The impressive thing was that he played on a flawed roster that wasn't very good, actually, and all the stars were fading, and he was sort of all right and didn't look like he should be kicked. He didn't become a star until 2022. And so even though, yeah, I'll give it this, I do think he had like 2 years solid being a really good player, but it's only with kyxsan. We've never seen him do it with any other IGL. In fact, I'll be very interested now, boys, without kyxsan to see how Brokey even does, because I think if you ask a lot of great IGLs who lead international squads what type of AWPer you want, they'd never say someone like Brokey, bro. Like, the joke is, I even know why Snappy just did that move to bring Stout in, because his logic is, the wrinkle guy's just doing FPL shots, mate. I want somebody who just hits the boring 7 out of 10 shot, and I'll base my game around that. Like, there's the last thing to say. Fans think kyxsan's overrated. All the IGLs I know who've led international teams think he's the GOAT, bro, for that exact reason. Because they're like, who the fuck could take these players and be in the major final? Isn't the last one the craziest one ever, boys? We all know those players fucking sucked at that major. They should have been out in stage 1, and somehow they got to the final. Like, kyxsan would... I'm going to take the same angle as the ZywOo fans. Guys, the conspiracy would have to go so deep. It'd have to be like Gabe Newell programming the game during the matches, like, how could kyxsan get this lucky, bro, that any roster just goes to the major finals for like the last 5 years or something? It's impossible. Even, by the way, even people that we all now say are the GOATs, like Apex, when he didn't have this last year or two, took years without major finals. He's just sitting watching them all. By the way, usually losing to fucking kyxsan while he had ZywOo. Like, this is why I say it. The funny thing is how different fan takes are from the actual pros. The pros revere kyxsan, bro. Like, I've even seen at this point in time, most of them don't even say Glave's the GOAT. They all just give it to kyxsan because the Glaive shit was last decade, and then this one, they've all just seen him do it for the last 4 years. They're all mad impressed, so it's the maddest take of all time.
They've also seen him do it across different iterations, right? That's what Glaive is missing. He's only had one team effectively, right? That he has entire case.
Yep.
kyxsan is fucking 4. Like, it's crazy if you separate, the two-phase stints. So it's like, you can, there's a lot going for him.
Anyway, I do love, though, that fans will just wake up one day. You know what? That kyxsan, he's kind of overrated and carried. It's like, why is this your take? Why is this your take of the day? Is it not better? Surely there's other things we can be going on that shit over it, not, kyxsan, for fuck's sake.
Kind of why I want kyxsan to just, like, fucking ace with this Falcons roster from the get-go, because, like, it would just prove exactly what he's capable of, right? Because that's what he's done. Like, he just goes into a team. Like, you can actually make the case. We're probably going to talk about Falcons maybe later. We'll see. But you can make the case that this Falcons team is probably the best individually he's ever gotten. Like, by far. Even.
He could, yeah.
There's not even a contest, I think.
Sure.
So that's the crazy part,
No, but that's the other thing I think's mad is, like, if they want to say he failed with, like, the early teams, like the original FaZe Clan and TSM, okay, that's fine, but that was so many years ago, and in the years since he did a lot of other things, and I always point this out, since what he's been trying to accomplish from FaZe onwards was with international rosters, not national teams, there's only been 3 teams that have won the majors internationally, guys. It literally was fucking the Na'Vi one in 2024, it was Vitality last year, and it was FaZe in 2022. Those are the only international, and by the way, don't be a dickhead. Obviously, I know that Ukrainians and Russians aren't the same nationality, but they were speaking Russian. That is the language they all understand. Don't be a fucking idiot about it. Yes, when Gambit won, someone was from Kazakhstan, they were speaking Russian too. They all totally understand Russian. You know what I mean by that? There's no point being pedantic. You're missing the point of it. So the point is, it's not like other people beyond Apex are winning multiple majors with national rosters, mate. It just doesn't happen at the moment. So that's also, by the way, why all the players think he's goated, because they know it's different to win with all the people from your country and just 5 random people. His is even the worst, bro. He doesn't even have the thing where it's like 2 from this one, 2. He was doing it with like fucking UN shit of like 1 from this country and this one and this one. It's like, that's outrageous. Also, by the way, I'll just throw this out there. If we're talking about like having stars, he's winning fucking majors with people from Estonia, Latvia. What are we even doing? Those aren't even CS countries. There's about 1.5 players from those countries that anyone even gives a fuck about. He just managed to make them all champions is all. Anyway, but he did just leave them all without even saying goodbye. That's such a crazy soap opera. I thought that story was already big enough, but that makes it like sexier in some ways, doesn't it? Like, what a bastard. You womanizer, kyxsan.
It seems so ridiculous, even like that nobody would even stop to think that might not be true, because this is fucking kyxsan who's been like, he's been on that organization and with those players for so long and everything. He's like, he's gonna just say like, just cut communication, like just block everybody, leave, bye. It's like, this didn't happen. Jesus Christ.
But here's the thing. One last thing I will say. The one area, if you're a hater fanboy, that I do agree with you, is, listen, even though I'm mad biased and want to see both kyxsan on Falcons and at the major, obviously, because it's my own personal desire, I do get what you mean. The real problem is the way the story was framed. It was accurate. Remember, what they said is FaZe Clan has failed to qualify to the majors. So since we all took as the assumption, well, kyxsan has to be on FaZe Clan, that means kyxsan's failed. Because the story was like, kyxsan and FaZe have failed. Oh, wait, they've got one last chance. Oh, they failed that too. Well, they've definitely failed now. And then it was like a week later, it was like, actually, he's going to the major anyway. I know that felt just like, what the fuck? What's this bad writing? Like, what the fuck? Like, that's like a character dies in a show and then just right back to the next movie. Like, I know what you mean. That feels whack. But that's not kyxsan's fault, is it? Like, again, he has to take the deal. By the way, it'd be such a more if he didn't. If they went, you know what, you can join Falcons, maybe when the major, he goes, no, I failed to qualify. That would be wrong. Like, and I've pointed this out a million times. Please, can we stop doing this thing? I did this myself, but we all did it. None of us gave a fuck about Brokey being benched so Simple could play on FaZe Clan because the story was so sexy. We all wanted to see it play out. So the same thing. Look, I feel really bad for kyxsan. Maybe he'll come up on this show. But I'll tell you what. Even to his face, I'd go, it's really harsh what they did to you, but I even want to see kyxsan myself, bro. Can you just get the fuck off? Can you go join like Mouse or something? Like, it's just not for you, bro. Listen, you can be on any team, just not this one. It has to be kyxsan, I'm afraid. Okay, well, speaking of Carrigan going to Falcons. That would be a perfect time to bring up a little poly market, because obviously they have one for who was going to win the major, the IEM Claw major, which he will indeed be on the aforementioned Falcons. They are now up, gentlemen, to a 10% chance. Unsurprisingly, Vitality leads the way massively. And I'll point this out for the millionth time. You might think Vitality's going to win, though. Why are they only 56%? This is before one match has been played at the major, guys. That's actually an absurd number. Like, that number is essentially the markets are saying Vitality are going to win before any of the 24 teams or whatever play a single match, and before we know anything that happens. So, Striker, who do you think is going to win? And if not, I'm assuming you say Vitality, who is your second most likely? Is it Falcons? Do you have a different angle? What would you go for? What do you think the best?
It's funny
is?
Because we just did something similar on Confirmed, and it was not necessarily about the major, but as much as Falcons winning a tournament for the rest of the season.
Right.
Kind of like odds on that. I gave them 50% because they're going to win one of the next 2 tournaments, is what I think. So they're playing Astana and CAC, both. Like one.
Oh, you think they have a honeymoon period and win one?
Yeah, I just think this has so much potential for working, because like this is what kyxsan does. This is just what kyxsan does. He will come into a team. He will figure shit out very quickly.
Yeah.
He has the best. That's what I said earlier. He has the best pieces he's ever had.
Yeah.
Yes, it comes at a point where his career is like he's probably lost a piece of himself in the last 2 years since he last won a trophy with FaZe and all that stuff. I know he was super frustrated for a long time and like probably lost a bit of what kind of made him super special. Because just he couldn't figure it out for so long and see how to get back on the horse. But this is like the perfect opportunity for him to prove that he still has it, right? And so I think he just thrives in chaos. m0NESY wants all that. Kyosuke just wants to fight. Like, he has the best pieces for his sort of a play style. So I do think that Falcons actually will have a decent chance at the major. Obviously, saying that before we even see Falcons play at these next 2 tournaments is really difficult. Like, you still have to side with Vitality. Like, realistically, they are just too good to side against them at this point, unless, in these next couple of tournaments, we start seeing something from, let's say, a Spirit, which have looked a little bit better now, obviously, in Rio, or a Falcons who have this, like, big, massive potential with kyxsan, Like, right now, I would still give it to Vitality, not at 60%, maybe, That's a bit crazy, as you say. Like, normally, if you look at favorites, they have 20 to 30% like pre-event favorites. If they're heavy favorites, this is like next fucking level.
Put it this way, I don't think the number could ever be higher before even one match is played. Like, it can't be like 80%, guys. That would be absurd, wouldn't it? Like, spoiler, also, here's why... let me just actually quickly explain how Polymarket works. Here's why it also couldn't be at 80%, because even though I think they're going to win, if it was 80, I would buy the no on that one. I'd have crazy value if they then lost even one time in their single in the playoffs. Like, it would be worth it even if you think they'll win. Okay, Maui, what do you think? Who are you going with to win? And obviously, do you have a second team that you're picking in terms of value?
Can't pick anybody as the favorite other than Vitality, but for a second place team, I like that it's nicely distributed between Falcon, Spirit, and Na'Vi here, because those are really the only teams that I see with potential to pull off an upset, at least, because Spirit look like they're powering up. I think that's kind of the brightest sign I got from them at Rio. Obviously, still couldn't take a map off of Vitality, but the beginning of this season with Magic's at the helm versus now is a significantly better team today. Whether that's the Sotfic effect or the and Holly being gone is a different conversation, but I think that Spirit's picking up some really nice steam, because I don't know if anybody has it as a good point, but I mean, Tanir looks really sick. So I think that he's finding his way on the team, but still, it's just too much of a long shot. And I'll say one last thing on the kyxsan Falcons thing is that I think a lot of fans also weirdly think that a player doesn't really take to the environment around them. A prime example of this in recent history for Counter-Strike players is Rops. You didn't get, when Rops joined Vitality in 2025, you didn't get 2024 Rops. It's not a one-to-one swap from him over. Like, people don't remember 2024 Rops was probably, I don't think he was going to be on the HLTV top 20 list until he got an EVP at Shanghai. Like, that was his only EVP of the whole year.
And he carried the fuck out of the major too, so it'll have boosted his numbers massively, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just that one major basically changed his entire fate as an individual. And then yet when he joined Vitality, the environment around him made a lot of sense. He played better because of it. He worked harder because of that. I mean, the thing is with kyxsan right now, I don't expect him to make the best calls when he has Brokey and Jacob. I just don't think that he's always going to make the best game plan going into those kinds of games. But when he has the Falcons guys around him, I think that the percentage chance should probably be a little bit higher for Falcons. I think that they actually now have shown they could beat Vitality in a series, but then kyxsan I would have more faith in to put together a run at a major, which he has done, and he has shown us he can do even with weaker pieces than this throughout a whole tournament. So I think Falcons is probably maybe the best value for a secondary pick here.
Right, I'm sure, especially because Striker was a 1.6 guy, I'm sure he knows that it's actually an infamous thing in CS 1.6 that almost every team, it felt like, when they would sign a new star, would have like a 2 to 3 week honeymoon that would last a couple of events. And so famously, even if you actually weren't going to be the number one team, you would just win the first opener. A million variables. It could be like things like the opponent's not as prepared for you, they haven't played you a million times. But you also have the thing where, like, I always think one element of it, by the way, this is actually why, in my opinion, people like kyxsan win with stand-ins famously, as well as being like good at getting the team up to speed. It's that, like, when you play with a stand-in, because you know it's not permanent, you will sacrifice in a way you never will if it's like we're all just here for 3 years. If we're here for 3 years and I'm a star player, give me my fucking spots. You figure out your own shit, mate. We're both trying to have a career. But if, like, for example, we haven't won for 6 months and you're a new star coming in, maybe early on I'm like, hey, you take my spot, bro. Isn't that what you used to play in your team? I'll make it work over here. And you just do what you can, because early on your main goal is just have like a team that functions. And I think the reason why kyxsan's the best at doing that is when he joins these teams, actually, because at the beginning there isn't the expectation you'll be number one immediately, I think people actually almost have the same quality that, funnily enough, you see at the end of Falcons when it's a dead lineup. When it's a dead lineup, everyone plays really free, don't they? Or when Nucleons was there and they know they're not supposed to win. When they're not supposed to win, they have no bloody pressure. So magically Nico's the fucking MVP of the event and Modesty doesn't have any problems getting. And like, that essentially, I think kyxsan joining this team, this is why I'm actually the opposite to a lot of people. A lot of people were like, yeah, but right at the end of the season, and what does that mean about Falcons? Look, Zonic's not an idiot. He knows they probably weren't going to win the major. They've pissed the bed at every single fucking playoff so far this year anyway, until they now had this mini. Even then, they weren't that good at this tournament. They already beat Vitality and didn't win the fucking tournament. So to me, actually, this is the perfect move, because the history of kyxsan says if anyone could walk in and on his third LAN just fuck around, trip over and win the major, it's this guy, isn't it? Like, he'd be the one to do it. And surely all the players are thinking the same thing. Well, our goals are mainly for the second season, but hey, let's just give it a go at the major. That's probably the best mentality you could have on Falcons. So actually, I do think Falcons is the second most likely. With that said, I also like, by the way, I know that's because of the recent result, I also like that Spirit's up to 9%, because actually, if today plays anything like he did then, and Donk's just normal Donk, bro, they could have won that event. Like, that was actually doable. The craziest, like, slept on storyline is because Donk was like either ill and or had like a bad final. Actually, a lot of people will miss that because it said 3-0 and Liquid Pit. That was a really close first two maps. Like, I think if Donk turned up normally, bro, they'd win one of those, if not both. Like, that would be the alternate reality I'd love to go back and see, because I actually think, you know, everyone wanted Vitality to lose like a tournament before the major. That could have been the one. That could have been the one they lost here, and then they just go and win the Atlanta, and everyone goes to the opposite events, then we all meet the mid. So I actually think low-key Spirit's actually a sleeper, assuming you believe Donk will come back to his form. If they ever get anything like that from today again, it's doable. So actually at 9%, if, by the way, essentially, if you really believe in Falcons or Spirit, you can get crazy value on this. So I would say, like, now is probably the best time. But it's weird. If one of them wins a major, you will never get that sort of number again for them in a future major. They will, as said, Vitality will be at a normal 30%, and then Falcons will be at 20%, and then Spirit will be at 18%. That's how it'll normally work. So if you really do think that Vitality can lose, and it is a single in playoffs, remember, then this is the best chance ever. Also, I'll just say one last added implied value, which is the narratives can all connect as well, which is always Falcons have been the team that in a one game could beat Vitality. So I've always said, what really pisses me off if I am Na'Vi or Spirit is, Falcons, can you just make every playoffs beat Vitality for me in the quarters, and then I'll just beat you in the final, and then I get to win the tournament. That way, if I'm Na'Vi, I don't have to win the tournament, mate. I just have to be better than Falcons, which is totally doable. Or Spirit, just like, I just have to beat Falcons in about that is doable. So I also think there's like a mini implied value if you think actually Falcons can take care of Vitality otherwise. Okay. We will now go to my ugly point. And this one's also appropriate. It's actually tying into all the themes here. I just want to see where people go on this one. It's just like the future of FaZe. Because, bro, we won't do the whole kyxsan thing here. I've got a point on that later, Maui. But I will say, one of the things that I was actually low-key shocked about is, when I saw this move, I was even thinking of the move last year with FaZe, where they got rid of Elise, but simultaneously they got a Twistzz, and it was sort of like, let's just swap. You want to play, I want to play. I even thought, bro, wouldn't this have been the perfect one for FaZe to just do a swap? Go, you know what, you get kyxsan, you want to save the skin, but you're going to have this kyxsan guy on the bench anyway. Why don't we have kyxsan? Like, that would even be an interesting way to, like, pivot and be like, it's the new era of FaZe. We've got a good IGL who can work at... Basically, my ugly is just the future of FaZe, because as of right now, I can't know if it's going to be bad. We don't technically know the full 5-man lineup. We don't really know, is it just Twistzz is going to IGL temporarily? Is this going to be... We don't even technically know if they all stay. Maybe after this player break and the major Frozen goes, or maybe Twistzz himself goes. No one really knows, but that's why I put it as ugly. Because as of right now, you also, if you're a FaZe fan, if you're one of the rare FaZe fans that wasn't just secretly a kyxsan fan, but that just meant being a FaZe fan, we all thought forever, if you're one of the ones who's a real FaZe fan, what are you hoping for right now? In fact, what even is FaZe to you? Like, I there's nothing to grab onto for me. So, Striker, what do you think the future of FaZe? What even is it? Do you have any clue?
I mean, it's pretty dark. It's been pretty dark for a while, to be honest. Like, as they've been on this downward spiral, because it just felt like they've always been at least 2 changes away from being good, right? And now it's actually 3 because they've already made one kind of against their own will to a degree, right? So I did hear that there was a possibility that it would have been a swap, and that
that'd be cool.
They just decided not to. I don't want to say like that's 100% what happened. Okay. Just like one of the things that kind of was behind the scenes a little. It would have been interesting for me, at least a good start, because I think kyxsan. I don't think kyxsan's lost any real value on Falcons. I don't think it was his fault that his fucking players decided to just disappear in the key moments, and he would have had some trophies if that didn't happen. So I don't think that there's any blame to be had for kyxsan. He would have been a decent option, but otherwise it's just so difficult because you need to replace Brokey. There are no offers to be had effectively unless you buy somebody out that's already good, and all those guys are locked in. Like none of those are going to be making any moves unless you believe Molodoys is really moving, based on the rumors that we've seen. Like that's the only piece that I could see kind of shifting at some point, But why would he go to FaZe when there's like 5 other teams looking for a great offer to join their team, So I don't think that's happening. And then you probably have to replace Jacob because it's just too early for him. Like he's not ready for this kind of a level. But by then, this team is going to be like top 60 on the VRS. Yep. They're not even going to have any invites. They're going to have to go through all the open lands. Who wants to join this team at this point? Is my problem. Like out of the players that are really proven, So I've been making this point for a while that they needed a coach that is used to doing a lot of scouting, just looking through the tier 2, tier 3, and just find that gem, right? That's why I kind of like the NKJ one, because I thought Ash would have been a good pick for that because he's kind of had a proven track record other than, the offers problem, which, has been a problem for a lot of other teams. So I actually like NKJ because he's also been that guy who's been down in the tier 2, tier 3 for a long time. Yeah. He's always had to look out for some of these pieces. Hasn't had an amazing track record with it, but at least he has some experience with it. So I have some faith in that direction, but they just do need to find that guy because otherwise I think this is pretty doomed.
Hard to disagree with anything about that. I mean, I think the prospects of FaZe right now are they're interesting because I feel like a lot of young up and coming players, if they are able to find prospects, it's probably pretty easy to attract talent when you have Twistzz and Frozen still on the lineup. As long as they have those 2 guys, I would be pretty surprised if anybody who's English speaking that's on a top 50 team in the world would turn down a FaZe offer. So I think that the question for me is if they are able to, I mean, they obviously Natio has been linked to them already, but if Twistzz is in-game leading and I think that's like maybe the one hesitation that a player may have, but I think people just see the legends who are Twistzz and Frozen, and they'll probably be attracted to joining FaZe. I don't really expect though that this lineup is going to be competing for top 10, and I think that's where I find this to be rather ugly. It doesn't feel like CS when FaZe is not competing with the best teams in the world on a regular basis. I also think that them having to go through the VRS grind of probably playing some local lands is going to be a little bit tougher for this kind of team, who, by the way, had a weird amount of difficulty at local lands. I was really surprised at them not just smashing their way through an HLC Belgrade type of an event. Like I think that I would have
By
thought
the way,
that
don't
all
you
of their
think
players
that's
would
the
have been
weirdest
capable of doing
part?
that.
Even though everyone thought we were all hating on FaZe, I kept telling people what shocked me was like the floor just never ended. Like I kept thinking, okay, they might not win a game of like IEM Krakow except BC.Game. I didn't think they could actually lose to like nobody's. Like what the fuck? I even thought they beat Big. What the fuck is that?
Exactly. When everything's on the line for them and nothing's really on the line for Big at that point too.
Yeah.
That's usually where FaZe just power up as a team. I think that they're, in a way though, they're going to be relieved to maybe not have, even though the structure of the team I imagine will probably be a little bit weaker with Twistzz at the helm. I do think that they will be lightly relieved if they just pick up their own tier 2 star players from whatever teams they find in their scouting than having kyxsan, who kind of was definitely weighing them down in some aspects. I mean kyxsan, what was he? He was like weirdly just good at that PGL Bucharest event, but like I don't really take that at face value. You know, I think that his lack of ability at the other local lands was a bit more telling to the form and what FaZe.
By the way, though, shout out to whoever it was who did just do that shit Reddit post where they were like, all Falcons did was like, right, whoever does the best on FaZe at the next and last lab was signing them. That was at least funny. That was a decent meme. Not most memes and shit, but that was a good one because he goes top rated technically after 2 maps or whatever. Sure, true.
Rare moment where global offensive monitoring actually let a funny post through. By the way,
they nailed it.
Yeah. No, that's kind of all I have to say about that. We'll see. It's more like we'll see what goes on with this phase, and it's kind of hard to expect too much out of them in the near future.
Well, luckily, go on.
Sorry, I think the Twistzz detail is also a little bit ugly in the sense of he was also kind of quick to get off of in-game leadership as soon as he could when he had it in Liquid, right? So I'm not sold on this being the permanent solution. I do think that they're going to get somebody else. I hope at least that they're going to get somebody else because if they also neuter Twistzz, I think that's a problem. You have to build around those two guys.
Yeah, no, I'm also with you on that one. Even though I think to some fans, they think it's like Twistzz be like, let me be IGL again. No, I think actually he's on some Nico shit where he's like, I did that. It didn't work. And actually, I'll only do it temporarily like Nico did at one point in time. Just because have to. Someone has to do it, like he did in G2 when they didn't have fucking Hooksy or whatever, Like, it makes sense too. But here's the thing though, Maui. Obviously, the topic of FaZe and their future developing roster will be discussed on this podcast, on HLTV, on many podcasts. So if someone wanted to listen to that in better quality, what would they do?
Well, given that this message is sponsored by Raycon, they could acquire some Raycon Essential Open Earbuds. We, of course, are sponsored by Raycon. You can go to their website, www.buyraycon. That is BUYRAYCON.com/snakeopen, where you can get 20% off the Raycon Essential Open Earbuds, which are really great for just, if you're out in nature, as I frequently am, I think it's nice to sometimes have a little bit of a backing track, and this is the perfect way to do it. You put them on the kind of the side of your ear, because also if you're somebody that bikes frequently, this is probably a lot better of an option where you want to hear the traffic around you. And you want to make sure that you're not just oblivious to it with some in-ears that are just covering too much of what you're supposed to hear. You have to be aware of your surroundings sometimes, whether that's in nature and there's a bear behind you, or it's on the road and there's a speeding maniacal driver that's going to slam on you. So, yeah, of course. ZywOo fan or maybe fans of certain teams.
With that sticker on the back, honk if you think ZywOo was #1 in 2025.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but with the Raycon Essential Open Earbuds, you'll be able to hear that honk when it actually inevitably comes, because everybody needs to be a fan of ZywOo, and if you aren't, then you should just get run over, apparently. But no, of course, if you want to upgrade your earbuds, if you want a design that maybe you're just getting a little bit tired of the kind of in-ear feeling or the over-the-ear cups, this is a new way that Raycon is getting into the game, which really kind of allows you to just be more in tune with what's happening around you. So check them out, and I'm pretty sure they have a money-back guarantee if you... Actually, let's see.
Isn't it like a 30 days happiness guarantee?
There's a 30-day guarantee. Right? Exactly. There's a 30-day guarantee if you don't like them. So, so it's practically just free to try them out.
I like the way Maui just added that little detail there, implying that when he walks around in nature, he's doing like Tarantino needle drops of music. Like, he gets like the email saying he's been hired to the next blast. So he quickly goes on his little like iPad or whatever. Like, here comes the sun. He's walking up the side. Fucking hell, mate. He's just living in a dream, isn't he, this guy? Whatever. It's all good. Anyway, you could be too with your Raycon. So we'll now go, funny enough, to the good section. So, Striker, what is good at the moment?
Yeah, Mauisnake kind of preempted it a little bit in his little piece about Spirit. I think it's Tanir's resurgence at IEM Rio. It was like a guy completely changed around from the way that we've seen him so far on this Spirit roster. And I like, my hope is that it continues, because I think it's what Spirit have been missing to become a real contender on this team, because they couldn't just rely on Donk and Shiro the whole time. Just watching him do whatever he wants to a certain degree, because like by series 3, when he saw that he was on this form, he was just making moves all the time, and he was like SCT on Mirage, he was pushing ramp like without any support and things like that, like just catching the right timings all the time. Like something clicked in his head where he was just like, yeah, I can just do any of this stuff and it will work. And it actually did work for most of that time. And it felt like he actually had a good idea of when to do these things. It wasn't just random, like, you know, I was going to push just because I'm confident now. So like this new side of Tanir, I think, is what we've been looking for ever since he got on this team, because we'd seen it in Heroic, where he was the main star and he took it upon himself to make all of these moves. But then he got into Spirit and it felt like he was neutered, where he probably limited a bit in what he could do on the map and how much he could take up resources over a Donk on the other side and things like that. So I think that, I don't know whether this was a clear directive or if it just comes as part of, you know, his increase in form at the tournament. But I hope that this is the Tanir that we will see going forward, because I think we've been missing a real contender to Vitality, and I think Spirit always had to be somewhere in that conversation with the lineup that they had, as long as the pieces did what they needed to do. And I think if they get that third star, like that X factor in Tanir, I think they can start taking the fight to Vitality. And we saw it in Rio a little bit more, right? Because as you said in the final, I think, you know, if Donk is up to his normal level, they realistically can win. They could have at least taken 2 maps off, if nothing else. And, you know, maybe Vitality then would realize, oh shit, this is actually a problem, and still beat them. But they were really in with the fight for that final to win the whole thing, which was kind of unimaginable until this tournament, really.
The way I would describe it, based off of seeing Tanir before this tournament and after it, is that some of the caginess in his play wasn't there at Rio in a very good way. Whereas before, when he first joined the roster, and actually, I'll be fair to ZywOo definitely looked similar, where both of them they really kind of look like, if they fuck this moment up, everything's going to collapse. We saw the body language for ZywOo was horrible when he was first on Spirit in that season, because he just knows, like, you have to play a little bit differently when you're on the Spirit roster. There's a system that's definitely in order for them to maximize Donk, or Shiro to get his at the end of rounds, and you have to find a way to kind of slot in between those two guys. And it's pretty difficult, because you feel like it's almost like you have this really strong, I don't know, anchor is a term that we use differently, but like you have these strong polarizing forces on Spirit, and like finding any sort of wiggle room in the middle of them it's seemingly exhausting, and it's also extremely taxing to them. So to see him at this event just felt like you were saying, he just took a couple more opportunities. He sometimes read the game live and realized, okay, I do have the freedom to do this or to do that. And I kind of hinted at it also earlier, that I feel like the idea that Sotfix behind them, and we finally see that from Tanir, that we finally see him playing a little bit more freed up, probably has to do with something in the environment where Holly, we've seen the comm videos, they're telling, or the vlogs from Spirit, they're extremely telling, where Holly is extremely willing to just lay it down. If he sees some sort of error, he's a harsh grader. If he sees some sort of way that they can improve, he's not going to mince his words about that. So for Tanir in this one, it kind of feels like your parents are finally gone and you can have some friends over and you just kind of lighten up a little bit. Whereas it's always, before, it was always like his dad's standing right behind him, full supervision, as he's trying to hang out with his bro Jimmy, his friend Jimmy. You know, it's just like, you can't really be the same person that you are in your free time at school at recess as you are when your parents right behind you, just looking over your shoulder, scrutinizing every move that you guys are making. So I'm glad to see him free himself up in a bit. I have a feeling that Holly is still going to be a little bit harsh about the way that Tanir played in the final series, because he kind of, as cool as it was to see him make some of those individual moves, he also did feed himself to ROPS in, I think it was 2 of the last 3 CT rounds. that Spirit had on Mirage there. So they had a real chance to take that map over Vitality, but he kind of kept trying to be the hero. And so there's definitely a balance that he needs to find, but it's nice to see him just play a little bit more off the leash as he did at Rio.
The funny thing is, I was actually looking up while you guys were talking, and it's literally even directly correlated in the stats. So if you go to everyone's favourite one to see how aggressive you are on the T side of the opening kill percentage, right? In the first month of this year, he was up at like 24% opening attempts. Then a month later, it drops to like 23. Then at the beginning of this month, it was down to 21. And now for the whole year, it's down to 19% opening. So actually, you can see as the year's gone on, he is having less and less early round impact. Well, here's what's crazy is when everyone said, why did everyone want this move to happen? The whole time I was thinking, this is like when people do something, you know, when a toddler, it's called weaponized incompetence, doesn't want to like clean up the toys. So they purposely do a bad job because then they know the mom will be like, oh, let me do that, you know, and then she'll do it instead. She won't ask you to. That's why I almost look like they did with Tanae, because what's bizarre is everyone I know, like Striker said, wanted the Tanae from Heroic playing exactly like that. We all watched him play just like this with mad late round impact where it looked like in Heroic. He had the full green light as it was to do whatever he wanted, which meant lurk on the map, do his solo plays like you guys are describing, and then basically find fights where he's really mechanically strong and he beats most people, right? That's the player we all wanted to join Spirit, because essentially we were all thinking of it as like, Spirit gets their own ROPs. You have already like the best early round player in Donk on T side. If you can then combine it with a player who's a really strong star player and can close rounds out, everyone knows the most depressing shit last year was watching like ZywOo and fucking Chopper try to win like a 2vx. It was like, oh, kill me already. Like, it can't ever happen. If instead it's like Magix or Zontics and fucking Tanae is one of the two. Now this is possible. Now if we can set it up right, we can get the kills. It's do as you saw in that final. So to me, the actual angle, here's the angle where get ready, fucking people out there in Sputnik land. They always do this thing, right, where we always get hated on this show, me and Maui. Because, you know, in the same way we all get this scuffed, like telephone-based communication with someone says something in Russian on a telegram, someone translates it. We have to already trust the translation. And then also it then goes through a headline, through another post, through a report on a Play GG on a website. And by the time it gets to us, we only vaguely know what they said, but we all treat it as though that's the exact court transcript. So they do the same on our podcast. What happens is some guy takes this and fucks it all up and puts it in Cyrillic and says Maui said something like, Hallie should be hung, drawn and quartered. And then by the time it gets to them, they make some comment in a vlog like, Mauisnake, he does not even know anything about game. And it's like, fuck, what? and then even though, so get ready for the section, because if there's one area, I personally don't buy that thing that Hallie's just a total fraud and it's his fault and stuff. But I'll tell you the one area, if you want to hate on Hallie and Magix, is who did they think they signed? Like, why did you sign this guy who's a really good... Essentially, this is like you did sign Rops, and then on your team, you just put him in the entry pack. Like, why are you doing that? Like, why sign him at that point in time? If you're going to sign Rops, you want him to fucking gigabait. You want him to lurk all over the map. That's the player you wanted to sign. So I just hope, this is why I'm actually not delusional. I understand he might not have the same numbers he did at this land. Maybe it'll be somewhere between what it was and what it is now, halfway between. But just the impact of how he played, that style of play gives me actual hope for Spirit, mate. That's the reason why I was in on the move, even though I totally acknowledge I have no idea if Magic's going to be a better IGL than Chopper immediately. Like, he has to basically do it tomorrow. But I think if Tanae can play something like that, as we said on the section about IEM Clone, it at least gives him a chance to win the major. You can start to imagine a world, especially because you do, unlike every other team, you have the auto when you have Donk, don't you? That really is like having Prime Messi or Ronaldo. Like, at that point in time, if you have those players, you're almost an idiot if you can't put a team around them that can win. Like, you're just fucking something up because they're the most auto-win players ever. So I think this is a banger. I agree with you. I think it's just good. Like, essentially, the hope here is that just like happened with Navi and Makazi, that wasn't just a one-off play, but he was then really good at the next tournament. If you have these players actually developing into the players we hope they can be, then suddenly all that doomerism about Vitality, man, I even think that last final means people should stop the whole, like, it's already over, Vitality's basically won. Like, bro, I can tell you Vitality doesn't think that. They know that those first two maps were way too close, mate. I think that's why Apex was pissed off, mate, because he understands that if that happens at the major, mate, we could fucking lose. Like, remember that Austin one, bro, they didn't even play it well in the final. They know if Mongols, by the way, also turned up, they could have fucking lost that one too. So if you want some hope that Vitality doesn't win everything, Spirit's one of your main irons in the fire. It's got to be.
I don't know if there's a thing about Hallie later, but I just want to pose this question.
Give me your take.
I'm just curious about what you guys think. Do you think if Spirit win one of these tournaments that they're playing before the major, that Hallie still comes back for the major?
Where's the problem?
To come back for the major.
Right, one of the problems I have with this is, I know Maui was doing this angle, but I actually wanted to ask Maui if he's being serious, because here's my problem. True, obviously, logically, Hallie cannot be speaking in the timeouts, bro. Like, at that point in time, he's in the... But surely, logically, I think it's the same with Mara. These guys aren't at the event, but I'm going to assume every night they all go home and do like a fucking Skype call or whatever it is, Discord, wherever it is in their country, and they all have a conversation, and he remote coaches them all and tells them, right, here's what I thought on your game, update this, I've just got to map 3. I assume he is having some impact. It's not really like he didn't coach the team, so I don't know on that one, because to me, I assume it is, unfortunately, I do think it is his project. It gives me that vibe, the way they all talk about him, the way they look at the players, even this whole thing of like, even though we all say it's Donk who does it, I think it's more just that they cater to Donk, but it feels like Hallie is the blade of their project, doesn't he? Doesn't he get all the say? So what do you think, Maui? Is it possibly actually knows that he has to stay away, and it's better to just let them do their own thing? You think it can happen if they win a tournament? He means that if you actually have like a better result.
Well, I talked to the manager of Spirit about Holly's absent, and he said he literally had to go to the doctor. Like he literally had to. So I think that is just. I think he just had a couple appointments that he had to attend to. I think he's going to come back.
Okay.
I don't think that if he
because he probably went to the doctor, and then the doctor was like, "Wait a minute, what do you mean? You can't even see." He was like, "Holy shit! I signed today. I thought that was kicker. What the fuck was I doing? Oh my god! You're right. I need an optician. You're right. This is really bad. I'm fucked up. I've signed the wrong contract." Okay.
The one thing that I think Holly probably needed to do was go to an eye doctor, because he definitely should have looked at Tanir's sensitivity and said, this guy cannot be in an entry pack. Okay, just for reference on this, by the way, Tanir's, if you go to like CS2 pro settings and you look at Tanir's sensitivity, they have hundreds of professional players.
Come on.
Tanir is the third lowest effective DPI.
By the way,
of
spoiler.
Anybody.
This is actually a detail people often miss about CS, and if you followed FPS games a long time, you'll know what I'm about to say. Do you know how Tanir, when he actually sprays on you, it looks like he's an aimbot? That's what really low sense is about. It's why Nico has like the best fucking aim too, because they have absurdly low sense. But it's also why, like Maui said, you can't be like an entry player, bro. You'll never be able to check a box. Like you have to essentially, like you're pointing out, you have to know that there's only one person alive, and I know exactly where he is, and I have to aim it like as I come in the corner like that. There's no like, the simple shit where you would walk around the corner and then like flick over here like that. Maui, he probably can't even do that movement, Maui. I bet that's like 3 times across his mouse pad or something, bro.
I mean, Flamesy is doing entry work for Vitality, spinning around like with a back 10 as he's jumping up. He has 3 times his sensitivity, 3x his sensitivity, like that, and that makes what Flamesy does possible, because he can just whip around like that.
It was Ragin who told us this story when the aforementioned Woxic was in Mouse, to highlight how insane Woxic's sensitivity was. There's a real story that when he was playing CT side on the old train, he was watching the alley, and a teammate said to him, "Are you watching the left side or the right side?" And he said yes, because his sensitivity was so high he could just hit any shot with like that much move. That's like it's a ridiculous example, but it's the best example ever of what high sense is, bro. It's also just a polar answer to it. Like it's like a comedy answer.
Yeah. No, it's just better to keep him on the extremities.
Yeah.
Knowing Woxic, I'm not 100% certain he understood the question at the first place. At that time, his English wasn't that great.
Yeah. Okay, Maui, what is good?
My good point is that, this is one that I feel like could be a little bit contentious, but I actually wanted to do it because Striker's on the show, and it's just that it kind of continues
is that my cultural impact? What is this?
No, well, I think it's just something that you can comment on, because you obviously reap the rewards from this. Is that I think that this, even though people have talked in different directions about content creation in Counter-Strike, that maybe there aren't as many creators or whatever. I think people always just want more, even though they should just be happy with a lot of what they have in this space. I would say that right now, more than ever before that I've seen in CS history, there are ample financial opportunities for content creators. If you want to actually be, and I'm saying this almost as like a public this is a public service announcement, that if anybody has ever considered getting into content creation, as long as you're willing to take the bag from a variety of sources, this is a very, very good time to get into the space, because there are so many opportunities to make a good amount of money, like money you can absolutely live on. I'm saying this like I'm basically saying to any, if you were ever considering like, should I start a YouTube channel? Should I make a podcast? Should I try to stream? Should I try to be do anything? Now is a perfect time. There are so many different groups that are putting money into this space. Obviously, people see the sponsors that we have on our podcast. I'm bringing it up also because Striker and HLTV Confirm get a ton of sponsors also. But even individually, there's tons of people now. People like to clown on people for having a little, like icon or logo next to their name now on Twitter. The amount of money that company is paying out to people is worth doing that. It's definitely worth doing that. And people want to always stand on these like moral high grounds or any high ground at all, especially people that don't get these offers. But once you actually see, and I would say, if you live a privileged enough life where you can hold out for a very long time, keep doing that. You can still be a content creator. But if you need that financial incentive, now is the best time I've ever seen in CS history for people to just make a livable amount of income based off of content creation or having a strong enough brand. So take it how you guys want to, because I would say that the one kind of like questionable aspect to this is what the money is. Is it gambling? Is it sports betting? Is it something else? But there are fairly companies that do have product. They have different products. I would say I'm not going to even make a judgment on what those products are, but the way that these companies make money maybe will upset certain people more than others. On the other hand, we're making a decent amount of money from doing this kind of stuff. I would even say from a personal aspect, it is pretty daunting to look at what streamers make. If you want to just do the most legitimate run possible and only make money from like YouTube ads and Twitch money, that's where you're going to probably run into problems of looking at the money. Like I can even speak on this from my behalf, give a little bit of insight, because for the last couple events, for IEM Rio, for PGL Bucharest, I was probably the second or third highest English co-streamer for those events. And yeah, our numbers in Counter-Strike co-streaming, other than Onepixel, are dwarfed by what you see in Valorant and what you see in League of Legends, for example. But what I made from that is it's a little bit above California minimum wage, but it's not by a huge amount. I'm not going to live off of that kind of money personally. Some people probably could, but that's just kind of the ins and outs of it. But the sponsorships I have individually and from what Last Free Nation get are more than enough to sustain myself, even if I didn't work events. Like I could live a really decent life with just those before I even go to Blast. So just saying, like, just a PSA, so you guys could take this wherever you want to. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a lot to add to this because I'm not really the person who deals with the sponsorship side at all. Like I'm not a marketing guy. I don't even, like, a lot of the time I don't even see like when our deals run out on confirmed and all these things. But I do see the space. I do see like, certain companies like kind of are everywhere because they just want to kind of overwhelm, right, and get into the space and just take everything that means something, right? They just want to get into all the podcasts, all the content, all the biggest content guys. So like I can definitely see what you're talking about in terms of, there are a lot of people out there that are willing to kind of throw money around just to get their name into the space, right? Yeah, I mean that's about it.
I've got a question for you then, actually. Wouldn't you also say it actually applies to HLTV? I mean, as an example, back in the day, like I referenced in the opening, when you were just one of the staff, I'm sure there was years you volunteered or you made like $100 a month or something. Yeah. This is the early days of esports when there wasn't much money for everyone. In the modern day, people have probably seen, there's loads of people who joined HLTV staff as like big positions, like Nero and stuff have come on. And people like Note aren't just people doing articles. Now they do their own podcasts. Like it feels like even at HLTV, there must be more money to go around and more staff positions and more opportunities, right?
Yeah. I mean, we also have like a video team now, which we never really had before, with Matt Big Little that people might know from before, from Blast and Astralis even. And so like we have the most full-time people we've ever had, really. And that is through, HLTV doing as well as it ever has, possibly even better. Again, I don't necessarily see into a lot of those numbers a lot of the time, but in terms of how much we've grown, 100% the case. Obviously we're also in a kind of a privileged position where we're not on stream, and so a lot of the limitations that come with that we don't really come to us, right, or don't really apply to us. So we're also a bit better in that aspect, especially nowadays, that Valve is shutting down a lot of that stuff.
All right, I've gone for a mad, edgy angle here. And it wasn't actually, it just happens to synergize with Striker's first point, but it's going to shock them because here's the thing, boys. We never can win, remember. The beauty of the ZywOo fan is you can never win. In fact, I'll even say the one thing I should have mentioned earlier, so I'll say it in advance now, is this. The one weirdest take that ZywOo fans have, I'll never get it, is that you don't get any credit for giving ZywOo credit. Because what they imply, right, is that that's like reality, that he's the best. So if you ever say he was the MVP, to them, that's like you just said, breathe air. You know, they think you haven't done anything special there. Now, what's weird is they themselves prove that's not true because they don't go, well, yeah, I also think s1mple was kind of goated, but I prefer ZywOo. They go, s1mple, lol, he was never even that good and he was overrated and toxic. Like, they don't even do it themselves. So they actually themselves prove you certainly do not have to give anyone credit. Because, by the way, I actually even have the same thing as you, Striker. I have the worst one ever was when Brazilians used to 24/7 hound me. Because there is a piece of trivia I have given before, and it's just true, which is I'm not the person in general who does the media angle of like, could I give it to this other person who normally wouldn't win though? I am really autistic, bro. If I really think someone was the best in the tournament, I would give them 700 MVPs in a row. Like, I'm the guy in the NBA. I think Jokic should have won 6 MVPs in a row. I don't care that eventually it's like, yeah, but this other guy's team has a better record. And what about this year for this guy? That whole thing is like, if he's the best, he's the best, and he gets to win the award. That's just who I am. So I always give this stat that they always told me I hated Cold Zero. But I actually give Cold Zero more MVPs than HLTV.org did. Because even HLTV gave Fallen the odd one and Fur won one. I gave Cold Zero almost all of them, bro. I think the only one I didn't give was that one insane one where Taco did like a 1.2 rating. And it was like, you know what, at that point in time, that's like some Make-A-Wish Foundation shit. I can't be like, get the fuck out the way, kid. Cold Zero. You had to give him that one. You know, that was like the one time I broke. But anyway, so I say all that. I actually pick as my good point because it's an appropriate moment to do it. This year, if the HLTV list had to be done tomorrow, there wouldn't actually need to be a civil war over who is number one.
No.
ZywOo would be number one, and he should be. Like, what's bizarre is, I don't get this. People think, like, you're just a really big fan of Donk. Because he's the best. When he's actually playing like he did in that final, I'm not really loving that, boys. I'm not watching it like, come on, Donk, get it together, mate. Oh, bloody hell. Like, I'm like, can he actually play well? Because in that final, he got smoked, mate. He was kind of actually a bit mid, and for the whole tournament. Look, I get it, because s1mple and ZywOo and Donk are like inhuman. Yeah, a bad tournament is like he only had a 1.19 rating, which is like, what are we even doing? Yeah, that's like Ronaldo sucks, he scored 30 goals, you know. I get it, like we all know the scale's off. But I actually think the whole problem of last year, what we were all really scared was, is because Spirit made the roster move. What if they get worse as a team, which they did, but Donk just keeps fragging the exact same way? It's going to be an even more extreme version of what happened last year, because at least last year, they had times when they were like a winning team and they win the finals and stuff. They weren't even making finals recently. So I actually think that the positive is this. ZywOo will win number one if it continues this way. But he also showed he actually is the best player now. And I actually think this year he is better than Donk. Like, I also just think, and lastly, I said it earlier as well, I also have actually seen some development from ZywOo. Like, I actually get the sense he is being a little bit more, what funny enough we all said for like 5 years, which is, I wish sometimes when they're losing the game, he would do that dick simple thing of like, give me the ball, get the fuck out of my way. Like, I feel like he does do that, boys, now. He actually does just take over some of the games in a way. So for me, I'm actually going to say ZywOo is number one, and he deserves to be. There you go. That's a softball for you, Striker.
Yeah, that is for sure. We've even seen him do like some kind of questionable moves a lot. Like in this last tournament, even in Rio, like he's obviously dominant anyway, and even inside his team, like usually he has a bit more help than this. This time he was destroying everybody, and like he was far and away the best player on Vitality, and he was just still making, you know, some moves that you would see like a s1mple make, you would see Mauisnake make, yes. You know, you would see Donk make, where he overpeaks a little bit or just makes some like slightly stupid move, you know, but just. Like, I've never seen that from ZywOo before, you know, so it's a bit crazy. I mean, this year, look, like, I'm not spoiling anything in the fact that, like, if it ended here, there's not even a conversation. There will be a conversation for number 2 rather than on number 1, you know, like, much bigger than that, because even if you look at Donk, you know, the famous thing is people just like to look at the overall rating and they see that ZywOo is like 142 and Donk is like 136, and they're like, well, the statistical case is not so bad. You look deeper and you're like, yeah, but ZywOo holds up against the top 5. He's like 140 against top 5, where Donk is 115 this year. Yes. And you can see that the eye test, like the Donk has actually fallen off this year, like for sure, quite a bit even compared to the last year, because he was still kind of holding up even against the best teams. It was more deeper into the tournament where he wasn't getting that much done. So it was just, yeah, it's softball indeed. There's no conversation here. So I was the best.
I mean, it gets a little bit weird when I made my top 20 updated list after Rio, and I was shocked I was almost frustrated with how Donk has been playing statistically. I almost just because I'd say in group stages the eye test is great, but actually in playoffs he's fallen off. He's really having a lot of difficulty. Even as Spirit at this tournament put some of the pieces together, he was having a really hard time. I mean, I have stuff for Hot Take Point Made regarding Donk and his form and how far it's actually fallen. So I'll bring that up on that.
Basically,
show,
Maui can actually now recycle old bad kyxsan takes. Like, it's not even top 5. That actually might even be accurate now. kyxsan said that obviously when he was cracked out of his mind. It looked like unbelievably, but that's kyxsan. We all love him. You know, he's a visionary.
kyxsan said it when Donk had like a 0.9 KPR or something like that, and now I'm saying.
By the way, why does it feel like being friends with kyxsan is like when all those people for years until eventually he broke them had to like defend Kanye for like 10 years, where they were like, no, you just don't understand. He's a genius. You got to like let him. But then eventually everyone had to be like, actually, I disassociate myself completely. We're still caught in that toxic cycle, Maui, where we're like, I don't know, Chris Rock or something trying to explain that, like, or Dave Chappelle trying to explain that Kanye is not crazy. He's just, you know, misunderstood or some shit. That's our relationship now, bro.
I know. It's really difficult to also decouple what he says from my opinions too. Weirdly enough, I think like I always noticed that we would get grouped with like your points, kyxsan's points, and somehow Richard's points somehow are all just my takes as well. Okay. So unfortunately, I've been confused.
You guys like crazy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
All the time, because the thing is that the headline of whatever it is will then have our faces on it too, and it's like, I'm not the one saying this, am I? You know, so it's okay. Things are getting a little bit better. I've been on damage control.
Though. Like you guys have set yourself up for that. You know, you just have your face up with a lot of weird shit. I'm not gonna lie.
That is the one part you didn't realize, Maui. When I said, "Do you want to do a hot take show?" You thought, "Now I'm going to be associated with my hot takes." No. Now you're going to be associated with kyxsan's hot takes, bro. That's the real cost, exactly.
That's the real. People are saying, Maui, you don't even think ZywOo has X Factor. It's like, okay, we've gone too far. We've really gone way too far here, haven't we?
Who would have thought that there would be a show where you're not the craziest one, Thorin? That's kind of crazy.
Exactly. That's what's mad. I always do say that, by the way. On that show, I'm like the most beloved figure, bizarrely, because it's just a divide of who hates kyxsan or Maui more, and then I just get to just chill. Like, okay. Yeah, normally I was that guy. I was fucking Kramer going doing all the wacky shit, and everyone else was the normal person, weren't they? I know. It's true.
It's good.
By the way, that's one thing as well. We also actually are even too kind to kyxsan in that sense, because we all just go, well, he's balking. It's like, you guys are all balking too, and you're not doing all that shit. You're all just chilling. Yamco keeps it. Here's the thing. This is where I actually do know that, like, kyxsan just doesn't give a fuck anymore. You have to understand, he is on that Kanye shit. They can't tell him nothing. Because Yamco does think some things a little bit like kyxsan. He's just smart enough not to say it on Twitter. You know, he'd say that, like, over a beer privately, not send tweet. And also, kyxsan's got that sickness that I have, which is, you don't just tweet the spiciest thing. You almost, like, on some masochistic level, pick the timing that it'll be the worst actual received. Like, I've always told people, I don't actually even totally blame everyone for going mental on me over that fallen overrated tweet. Because if you actually know the context of when I did it, it was mad egregious. I did it right after he'd, like, carried the shit out of a game at, like, the fucking Antwerp Major and had, like, a 30 bomb. Yeah. Because, like, obviously I'm not thinking about it otherwise, am I? So because everyone was going, wow, the legend's back. That's why I was like, he's the most overrated player ever. Send tweet. Like, yeah, that's the moment it's going to be totally taken badly, isn't it? Like, I could have done it when he got eliminated and did a bad game, but again, to me, it was like, I have to stand against the crowd. So we're all fucked in the head. It's all good. You have to understand, in a way, these podcast Striker are like our therapy sessions where we're like getting this stuff, dealing with baggage, you know, learning to love again. It's all good. It's all good. Right. If we now go on, we have another interesting market for you boys, which is, I saw this one just got added. It was this month, I think. It was, will Furia make a roster move before July? Now, here's the thing. They don't obviously mean the fallen one, because he said he's going to retire at the end of the year. But you will notice it went really low at one point in time, and then it's gone back up again. So I assume what they actually mean is people probably saw there was that weird rumour that was like, Aurora's signing all these players. They almost certainly aren't, but they're like, oh, cool. And it's just one of those wacky, like, overdrive type, what the fuck is this? Like, it was all like Molodoi, Lexi B. It was like the most absurd lineup I've ever. It looked like someone just hit shuffle on a bunch of CS names and it popped out that roster. So people went, like, look, it's actually quite high. Look, it's actually gone up to, it's now at 52% chance. That's actually what the number is at after a few weeks.
it went up after the fall announcement, right? Like it just dropped.
But I think
before that and went back up.
This is the conspiracy angle, though, bro. Does that imply people think that also part of Fallen's retirement move is maybe actually after this cycle there is a player leaving Fury? Maybe. Look, I want to get your take. Do you think it happens, and do you think this number's right?
Look, I've heard a lot of the same stuff about Aurora, that they're at least looking into expanding internationally, that Molodey was thrown out. There's a lot of the names. Whether he actually, like, there's any commitment, I don't believe so, but, you know, I could not have all the information and all that stuff. I've said it before. The way that I look at it, this, you know, is actually exactly how I kind of started feeling, right? Because when those rumors happened, I was like, it's weird that it would be Aurora, because why would Molodey leave Fury after Aurora? Like, it makes no sense, you know? But then, you know, you don't know the Fallen detail at this point, you know, so you're thinking of Furia as this Furia that is struggling a little bit, you know, to match up to the same level as they had late last year. But it's still, they have that potential. Like, you know, they can win the tournaments if they hit that same level. But then the Fallen announcement hits and you're like, yeah, but maybe that means he is leaving because he doesn't want to be there without Fallen, right? So, like, I could actually see that being like the trigger for Molodey to leave even earlier, because he just doesn't have faith in the future of this roster without Fallen, right? So, like, I can't blame people for saying this. I do struggle with the framing of it with the before July, because obviously the off season runs until mid July. So, like, if it just happens mid-July that this doesn't come through, and obviously chances were there, but you just framed it wrong.
I will just say on that one, you have to remember, guys, Polymarket only just got into specifically CS, so their problem is they'll have just looked after the major and gone by that, and what they don't realise is the moves happen in the weeks after the major. So yeah, you're right. So technically the real thing that's scary here is like that on like July the 5th is when the player signs, and it's like technically you won't win on this market. So also do be aware, that's actually a valid point to say though, Strike, because they do want us to explain how it works too. Technically you are aggressively picking that they will, like, let's say losing like probably the round of 8 of the major and immediately make a change. If they're really going to do it last day of the player break, you're in trouble because it won't be before July. Maui, thoughts?
I don't think they would, just because if Fallen's riding it out till the end of the year in his announcement, I thought they would try to retain people for that entire time, but I'm sure there could be more stuff happening behind the scenes there, but I kind of just figured all of Furia's roster moves would happen at the end of the year.
Let me ask you a question then. I'll stir the pot a little bit and be a little shit stirrer. Here's something that actually, if we're talking only in the framing of this market, suddenly seems weird about Fallen's retirement announcement, which is when Fallen says, guys, he didn't even say I'm retiring after this major in like 2 months. He said, I'm not retired till the end of the year. Didn't he say I've got 237 days, or like something like that, right? Like I've got the whole rest of the year, whatever it was. I've got basically like 2/3 of the year. Isn't it a bit weird that that's the moment that Molodey cries? Like, mate, you cry at the end when he retires, like cry in December or something, or cry at the major. If you're, are you ready for the conspiracy thing? Look, the reason you cry is you know you're leaving after this major. Ooh, there you go. There you go.
I can see it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Because then think about that framing, like, oh, you were like a father to me. Sorry, Dad. Like, you know, some ooh.
He just cried because he knew he's never gonna be like Fallen was in the playoffs.
Ooh, like, okay. Look, I will say that one part has aged badly.
Actually, he cried because he said, "Fallen, why are you adding more pressure to my playoff performances, which I'm already crumbling on, man?"
By the way, that was even my take on this, like, Feed the Trolls episode we did, was like, in a weird way, the actual pressure now on the Furia players is even more, because like now you're the piece of shit. If you fail like the last major of the year, you're the guy who made Fallen just like retire on a shit result where you come like 9th to 11th or something. Like, there's actually more pressure. You're right. There's not less. There's not like, just play it out, see how it goes. Actually, you're just a douchebag if he doesn't win any tournaments now. Do you think it happens, Maui? Did they make a change?
I'm just gonna say no. I don't know anything, but I don't. I thought it was. I personally would have imagined at the end of the year.
Yes. I also just think the number is too high. Like, look, as I said, I do think there maybe are some question marks or some, like, what's going on there? Like, there are some things that don't quite align, I feel like, with, like I say, with some, but right now, also, I'll just add this in as well. I don't think the Brazilian scene's usually very good at keeping secrets on this shit. Doesn't that shit usually leak, like, super early? And, like, you already know moves are coming. So I also feel like, especially in their team, almost every move's always been leaked anyway. So I actually feel like if it was going to happen, they'd already do it. Also, it's implied, actually, that if they make moves, they're going to stay international. So there's actually 1 million players they could sign. So I just find it a bit weird that there hasn't already been a, like, what if Frozen joins Fury? There hasn't even been one of those, bro. Like, normally, surely the leakers out there have got something, but they don't. In fact, in Brazil, they even have their own leakers in Portuguese. The Roque Marquez and what that guy's called. There's always people who have all the info. So I would say it doesn't happen personally. And also, Striker pointed out there, even if it does happen, you might actually get cut off by the deadline date being July. So be careful on that one. Okay. We will now go to the last section of the show, which is, of course, the bad. So, Striker, what is bad at the moment?
My bad points, and I'm not sure what specifically is bad about it. I feel like it's just like an overarching thing. It's just like people taking this BC.Game project way too seriously, and like for what it actually is and what it has been for the past, ever since BC.Game entered the space, right? Because there are people who just constantly bring up these things like, oh, the FaZe core should join with s1mple and Electronic, or s1mple and Electronic should go to FaZe, and things like that. And they still believe that the BC.Game is somehow going to be a top 10 roster just because s1mple is on it. Like, I understand that part of it, where you see s1mple and you really want him to do well. You want him to be in the space because it's s1mple. And even though he's not as good as he used to be, he still has that flair. Like, he still has that thing going for him, and like he has it. But the way that this project has gone so far and the way it's managed, the organization, like, there is no future for players that join this team for multiple reasons, which is playing alongside s1mple is not easy. Everybody knows that. It is just going to be difficult for you to keep the spot for that reason, like for you to perform like up to your absolute potential, unless you are used to that sort of a atmosphere, around you. And the organization is like super willing to just cut you like within months if they feel like you're not cutting it, right? Like, they've done it. I've looked through the history of the organization since they entered like 2 years ago with that Guardian coached roster. They've gone to 20 players and they're about to change 2 more. 22 players and coaches like somewhere combined, that in 2 years. And like, since s1mple joined that team, it's obviously been change after change as well. And like, they gave up on the major run, even though it would have kind of helped them a little bit to the next season. All this, I feel like it's just very mismanaged. And I know that a lot of players have said no to this team for multiple reasons. And like, a lot of these core attempts that they've had, so many things have gone against them. And so many people, they're basically not willing to join unless they have absolutely no other option. It's like, that tells you everything, right? Like, no good proven player is going to join this team unless he has no other option.
It is. I mean, s1mple put himself in a prison of his own making for this one. Obviously he took a really, really huge inflated salary. If he really wanted to actually be on the most competitive team, you would have expected, or you would have hoped that with that kind of money that they would put a really competent team around you. But I mean, I think the motto of an org called BC.Game is you're trying to get rich quick. Yeah, you're trying to put a core together, hope it strikes. It's like it's. I don't know if I want to keep going with casino analogies, but it's just like you're playing slots. You're just every roll is just you're spinning it like it doesn't even matter. They have as much money as they could possibly spend. They're just going to try to keep putting rosters out there over and over again, and they're just going to keep betting on black. I need to stop. Actually, with the whole It sucks because obviously, yeah, we want to see s1mple play well because he's such a big draw to the space. I mean, I think that some of the most viewed games at what was the one that they played? Was it Krakow? Yeah, Krakow. Like, they had some of the most viewed games at that event.
It was even the same at PGL, bro. At PGL, when they lost all the games, they were still like the number one rated game of like some playoff matches.
I feel like top 3 even up until the end.
Yeah,
really.
It still draws views.
And I'm not gonna lie. Like, as somebody that is connected to the business side of the esport and wants to see it succeed, I want the highest viewership teams to do well. I don't need them to win. I don't need them to like. I'm not always rooting for them necessarily in that sense, but I would want to see them at least be competitive more regularly and not just be scraping the bottom of the barrel, whether they go 1-3 or 0-3 in a Swiss stage. That's just so far beneath them. I mean, they were down a map versus Voca or something like that. I think they were about to lose. It almost felt like they were going to lose to them at different points in time. Yeah, the team is pretty disastrous as it is so far. But with the amount of money that they have, I feel, and I would definitely just expect them to make some pretty pretty sick moves in order to just get themselves back in a competitive position. I don't know with Crazy on the team still, if that's gonna really matter or anything, but I just want to see them pull the trigger on just.
But like ultimately, he's gonna be out like the next chance they get, basically.
Yeah, I just want them to switch to being a full Eastern European team. That's kind of what I want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if they can do that, I think you have players that are gonna be able to work with s1mple. Like, I don't really think that s1mple, the way that he carries himself, works from Western players. I think he's way too harsh on them. I think that his tone is probably not to their liking, but I mean, someone like Electronic seems to also be like that. So they can also kind of have their little spats on the team. And I think that if they get people like Flit, like Fame, whoever, they probably can handle, like Flit and Fame worked with Dastan for a very long time, who also seems to be extremely harsh behind the scenes with some of his younger players. I mean, he literally called them out on a live broadcast. So I think that they should just be looking for people from that region.
Put it this way, I can even tell you, I'm not an expert obviously on the Russian language, but I do know a little bit. And one thing about Russian that actually people wouldn't understand is the reason why, look, there are also Russians who are rude, but the reason why Russians, if they speak English, will sound rude is within their language, they use like different forms of words to actually imply things like, right, this is like a diminutive form where I'm sort of being polite when I'm asking you to say. Essentially, for them to say like in English, like sit down, just sounds like a command. But there's different versions of how they would say it if it was their mom they were saying it to, or a friend, or someone if they were a boss. And unfortunately, because that's baked into how their language works, it's a bit like if people know, it's like that in Korean. In Korean, they have like a formal and an informal language that they use, and you would never say to like your mom, like, do this thing in that way. You'd say the informal one that shows built into how you're saying it, that you're being polite, etc. So anyway, the point is there is that anyway. So that's why I also think by default when someone like that even translates what they're saying, they're not understanding the cultural implication when they say that to a Westerner. Like I have always told people, the craziest mismatch ever was super young broken English s1mple walking into Team Liquid back in 2016, because famously Team Liquid was the ultimate like therapy session. No one's ever shouting at anyone, and everyone just like quietly just goes, kind of a bit annoyed at him. What? Nothing. Just hope the game. And so the joke was, it was like a bull in a china shop. It was outrageous. Like the mismatch never could have worked ever. So anyway, I'll rewind it a bit. I know what you mean also about BC.Game, because bro, there's a thing we're doing online where everything's like cynical and mockery, where it can only go so far. Like it's one thing to laugh at something because it's like dark humor, something failed or something went badly. What's weird is though, I get the vibe now that people actually pull for BC.Game and Falcons to lose their money, which is like, what do we do? Just take stock for a second or something, right? I'll give you two other teams as an example. One at a good level, so like Falcons, but doesn't win, and one at a low level that doesn't win either, but they just don't do what you want. Let's take as a top level team like a Falcons. How about Maus? When you hear Maus is making roster moves, your dream, if you're a Maus fan, is they're bringing in Frozen, they're bringing in fucking Twistzz, they're going to win tomorrow, they're doing a Falcons type move. No. If you're a Maus fan, you're putting that fucking smiling mask on while crying at like, oh, they're bringing in a 17-year-old academy prospect, changing Exertion IGL, and then we don't even know who the fifth player is, and it's implied it's not a big name. Like, that's a bummer. You wish Maus would spend money. You wish as a top team they would spend like Falcons and go, you know what, fuck it. We're buying some mega player who's going to come in and we're all going to win the championship. On a low level like BC.Game, doesn't everyone look at this FaZe clan, we just talked about it, and wish they'd signed some fucking big names? They keep telling us they've got money. Okay, get the checkbook out then. Go and sign a player. Like, by the way, the reason I said the kyxsan one is, that's not even I know it'll work, but that gives me something to work with, something to have an imagination. Hey, maybe there's a way it could work though, and that's a top prospect. Like, that's someone else who on your team could do big things. If you look at Falcons and BC.Game, look, don't waste my time. We know why you might hurt the Falcons outside of the game. That's totally fine. I know why you might think it's funny that BC.Game fails, because you know s1mple gets paid mega bucks and he's been a dickhead playing Dota 2 and then he doesn't win the game. Those are valid reasons to hate them. But this whole thing people do when they go, lol, they spent $5 million. Isn't that what we all want in esports? I don't know about you, but I think the best thing about Falcons is that they are fucking Real Madrid. And if they fail, they're not just going to go, oh, well, I guess we'll just fail for 3. They're going to sign the next star player, and eventually that will work. By the way, that actually used to be the FaZe clan fucking approach, which is what's so sad, isn't it? They've become the team that don't spend any fucking money, and now Falcons does.
Here's a better example, is Liquid.
Sure.
Like, they've also been that for a long time. Just didn't work, and then they become hated because
but surely the one thing we like about Liquid, the one thing you have to like is they do sign big names though. They try to get those, but it doesn't work. But I'd rather that than like, hey, put it this way, here's the obvious move. I wouldn't be able to laugh at Liquid so much if they just signed Sixy, who used to be on call. But I tell you what, I wouldn't be as hyped either, would I? Like, I don't really want them to sign an M80 player in a team. Like, I want them to sign like fucking Elise or something and have some crazy dream. So anyway, first of all, I don't get that. And the BC.Game one's the most egregious one, bro. People will know Falcons chose to sign Kiyasuke, mate. They chose to keep Twistzz and not Megas. They did all the shit to themselves. I don't even know what we're blaming the BC.Game owner for. Like, he's basically just told you, I tried to sign like about 10 other fucking cores that were better than Saw. Everyone said no. Then I actually for real said, how much is Donk? And was about to get my checkbook out. Like, boys, you might not like the outcome, but that's actually my dream owner. I've told people this story before. The reason it's so cool that G2 had Monacy for a few years and he was amazing is because that story is not just hype. Carlos Ocelot literally said to me at the end of 2021 with that scoffed roster that made the final in Stockholm, I even told him, because I knew him from League of Legends for many years, he was a friend of mine, I said, mate, I know you've just made the major final, but please know this is crazy fool's gold. You had no business even being there. Nico just carried your team. And if you look at some of the, like the AWPA, for example, you don't have an AWPA or an IGL. Like, I'm not even trolling you. You have to change this roster. It's true. He even said to me, I'm going to sign s1mple. And I was like, all right, mate, whatever. Let me know when you get. But what I didn't realise was he just meant, all right, he won't sign, but I'm going to, unlike every other team, I'm going to go and I'm going to say, what would the price be? And it's real. He actually said, for both s1mple and ZywOo, is there an amount? If I put an amount of zeros, do you say yes? Because his whole shit was, at the time, G2 was enormous. He was like, I can go to a sponsor, and they might not know this, but I might be able to get like Louis Vuitton to sign on for 2 million because I'm going to get s1mple, bro. Like, that's a real thing that you can do in business. The point is, they all said no, and his third option was, I'll try this Monacy guy. Just turned out he was kind of cracked, and that was actually a dope one. But the point is, you want owners to do this. You want them to reach for the stars. I think the wackest thing in CS, especially in esports winter, is when you know a team doesn't have money, when you know that they're just going to sit there and they're not going to sign anyone, and actually, a bit like FaZe, the second a big name leaves, he's getting replaced by a way smaller name, and over time it's diminishing returns, and at the end you just feel like, I mean, the joke is, you just said it earlier, we're all pretending like we care about FaZe now. Bro, if they don't get invited to any tournaments in the second season, we'll forget the word FaZe ever existed, bro. They'll become like NIP was early last year, where they had to get back on the radar before anyone gave a shit. If you're not even on the outskirts of making the major, you may as well not exist anymore. People forgot Blame F even played CS until recently. Like, he just got his comeback now because he got to qualify to the major. So, no, I agree with you on that one. And then also, the last thing I'll say is this. I might do one of my classics. I've done it for s1mple like 3 times now, but I guess I just have to be this guy's fucking dad publicly in esports at this point in time. I'm going to do one of those open letters because I have to explain to s1mple, and he's one of those guys, by the way, a bit like his style in teams. He doesn't learn from the private one-on-one and the DM. He just says all the right thing. You have to publicly shame him. So I need to do an open letter, and this is what the topic needs to be. I need to explain to s1mple that actually you are the number one reason why people haven't joined your team. It's not actually that the other players are shit. And here's why. There's 2 angles on this. One is, I think in any team, the 2 best positions to have nailed is star AWPA and star name IGL. If you have those 2 players, a lot of people will join to play with you. Like, as said with the kyxsan, a lot of people would join to play with the kyxsan. They think they'll win if they do. If you're already a superstar AWPA, by the way, there's a lot of good rifle players that are like, I want to play with a fucking superstar AWPA. Spoiler, Rops was one of them. Like, I want to be with a guy like that, then I'm going to win. At the moment, you have neither in BC.Game. And part of the reason why is, even though you got s1mple, everyone knows that it's real. Like, the dumbest thing is, here's the worst take in Counter-Strike, that BC.Game proves s1mple sucks. It proves the opposite, because you know the motherfucker isn't grinding. It actually proves that if he did grind, he would be pretty good at the game. He wouldn't be the best, but I tell you what, he could be like the 5th best AWPA. That's on the table for him.
He could be a top 10 player. He could be a top 10
player. But the problem is, because we all know he's doing that thing, and I'm sorry, we do know this, it's obvious. He's doing the thing, Striker, where it's like, well, I'll only start grinding like that once I get the roster. It's like, you got it the wrong way around, idiot. If you do it now, literally, if you grind for the next month and a half, that is when someone who is another top player would go, actually, I could join that guy now. They're not going to join while you're like half in. Because the other problem, think about what we just did with that poly market is, I also think other players are scared, Striker, that if I join BC.Game, it's like Twistzz going to FaZe. I join BC.Game, lock in for 2 years, and then in 3 months, s1mple goes, you know what, actually, fuck it, I retire. And then I'm like, what the fuck's my career now? Now I'm on the no s1mple BC.Game, where they're going to stop spending the money, and then I'm going to be playing with prime one-taps again. It's going to be some shit like that, isn't it? Like, That's why no one will join your team, bro. Like, it is. Like, if you do everything you do, then we can all defend you and go, they should get you a better team, should get a better roster. Right now, like that Donk one, I don't care if I was Donk, I'd veto that. I don't care if you're going to pay my team 100 million. Now, I would want to go to your team and lose every fucking match now. Even if me and you were there, we're not going to win like we would in spirit. So I agree. I think that's a totally valid one. Okay. Now we go to Maui's bad point. What is it?
Mine is that, and maybe this would actually change in the near future. I hope it does, but I'm going to bring it up now because the way that Ash's career has looked for the past 5 or so months has been more or less. I wanted to soften the blow of this, but I don't really think that there's any way to do it. I think that it's actually been a disaster class in career navigation. I think that he actually the news that just came out regarding Ash and him parting ways with GamerLegion is off of the back of him benching himself for GamerLegion. And I'll say also there might be something to the idea that he wanted to bench him. He benched himself because he did refer to burnout, and burnout can affect people in a variety of different ways, you know. And I don't want to also diminish the possibility that he's that maybe he's in a better mental place now, because that obviously can really improve everything around you. But I'm going to just go back to the quote that he said in January, 3 months ago, where he wanted to prove that he can win trophies. And that's also pretty much fresh off the bat of re-signing with GamerLegion not too long before that. Like that to me is just such a ridiculous move when his stock was at an all-time high last year. Then he re-signs with GamerLegion, it says he wants to win trophies, and there were a couple teams at that time that definitely could have used a coach. Now we know that G2 was higher in their priority list than Ash, so that wasn't going to actually happen. But for him to see NKJ get the gig with FaZe is just kind of ridiculous to me. Also to see, I'd say, even Flashy, or who is working with Liquid, over him on that team. I'm just shocked that he hasn't gotten onto some organization that's a little bit higher in stature than what he's on right now. And for me right now, and again, maybe it can change. Maybe he'll get on some top team here or there. But with FaZe signing NKJ, even though I've actually defended that move, I think on Feed the Trolls recently, I also think that there's no real option for him to get on a top 10 team. I don't see how any of these organizations could go for him. I think Zonic has probably bought himself even more time with Falcons now that he's picked up Karrigan. I think the other top, I don't see him replacing any Vitality, obviously, Na'Vi, Furia. Those guys have their coaches in my eyes. The only team that I feel like probably could look at an upgrade would be more on the line of like, say, a Foot or an Astralis, but like I think they are pretty set with the guys that they've got over there. I think Coolio has done really wonders actually with the Foot lineup, so I just don't even really see where he goes, and that's just kind of the bad point of this, is that I just don't really, for a coach who accomplished a lot with GamerLegion even before the blast run, what they did to get to Rio, for example, with that lineup there, and then obviously to hit the highs that they hit at Rio, or at Paris, that is, and then even actually finding some, I'd say, pretty good success and finding some really good riflers. It feels like Ash has had two Achilles heels, and you can only have one Achilles heel if you want to be competitive in this space. His one, first of all, was that he couldn't find good oppers, and his second one now is career navigation. And it's just that this guy just seems completely hamstrung, despite the fact that he can put good systems together. He can get more out of riflers than you would expect otherwise when they play for other teams. And now it's just a slew of failures on his end that have now seemingly taken him out of commission.
Well, you know what the rumor is, though? The one team that you didn't mention and that we've talked about before in this podcast is Aurora, because that was the whole central thing where he would be taking up coaching in this new international project for Aurora. Sorry, so like obviously that I feel like is like this GamerLegion announcement, and I don't know whether this is true, by the way. I'm just saying, like, as kind of like my best guess is that this Aurora move is happening now, where they've gotten the coach and they're just like starting to build this international project. And he has these next 2 months to figure out what the roster will be for the next season, right? I mean, that's where you start. You want to start with a coach, so I feel like that's where he goes. I think that's his destination.
Okay, the problem. Go on. Do you have a response?
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, if that's actually going to happen, okay, first of all, massive shakeup that I know that there's been rumblings about a pretty drastically different Aurora team. If he gets some,
I'll tell you, like I've said this before and confirmed, it is real. Like they are not necessarily the actual lineups that have been said, but it is real that they're looking into creating an international lineup. Like I've heard this many times, and I know like from very, very credible sources, like this is happening.
Okay. I mean, if Ash is at the helm of it, then that's great. I feel like with how he's actually been able to work with the GamerLegion pieces and build them up to the levels that they found, kind of scattered. I'd say there's been little gaps here and there where sometimes they aren't competitive. Sometimes they make a nice, cheeky little playoff run or they qualify for some playoffs. That's great, and it would be nice to see him fill those kinds of shoes. And if it all actually comes to be, then I would say congratulations, and I'm really excited for the future. But I'm just working without that information. That's of course where the point comes from. Where I've yet to see it happen yet.
I mean, I hope that's what happens, because if it doesn't, then yeah, I absolutely see him just like falling through the cracks. Nobody will ever give him a second look, because he will. Like none of the top teams are going to look into new coaches, as you were saying. Even the ones that you mentioned, especially Foot, it feels like they're giving Coolio so much credit for everything nowadays that I don't ever see them moving on from him unless they start plateauing like crazy, which is not going to happen for at least the rest of this year. They're definitely going to give this lineup a really good shot, and then maybe Astralis, yeah, sure. Like if you want to move on from Raga, but from yes. So that's like the only thing that you can possibly imagine, so that seems unrealistic, so that it really does seem like there's only one real option.
And your point is still valid anyway, which is regardless of what happens now, he did completely blow all of his cultural cachet last year when he re-signed in April. Remember, when that was even teased, we all thought the announcement was like, congratulations, Ash, he's leaving and he's getting the Team Liquid gig. Like, the timing looked like that was the move. And I think everyone's sentiment was like, cool, that's the right time for him to do it. Time to leave GamerLegion. They obviously can't get good enough players anymore. By the way, one of the reasons why he never should have stayed with GamerLegion anyways, they're not a big org, so they don't have fucking money to spend. So that whole thing of like, you have Ash, he could just sign people. Everyone has an Ash at this point in time. That's the problem. What essentially was a skill set for him individually became so that every team does that because everyone's international now. So at this point in time, like, you can't go and get those players. They actually go to better teams, or they're already on academies and you just can't get them into your squad. So already I thought the GamerLegion one, he wasted his time. Then, if you go and look at the date, I looked it up. He re-signed on the 24th of April, and then on the 12th of October, so less than 6 months later, is when he was like, right, I'm self-benched, I'm burned out. It's like, bro, what was this re-sign then? Because I'll tell you the analogy, and if anyone isn't enough of an adult that they're not a fucking Zoomer, they'll know what I'm talking about here. There's a famous concept that happens in the West, right, where people who've been in like a situationship for like 5 years, so they've had a long-term girlfriend, but they didn't marry her, but they lived together as if they were married. There's a famous thing that if after like 5-6 years they suddenly get married, it's really famous that they divorce like a year later, and that actually they almost did the marriage as like the last thing to do before you break up, almost like, let's give it one last proper try, and then when it doesn't work, you go, fuck it. That's what this looks like. You're with GamerLegion for something mental. Like, I think you were with them since 2020 or something, guys. Like, 1 billion years. At the end, presumably when they know you've got this, like, offers and people are interested in you, you've built this media personality, they come to you and go, hey, baby, sorry, I didn't appreciate you. Here's the diamond ring. And you go, oh, I always knew we were meant to be together. And then 6 months in, you go, it's just the same as before, isn't it? Actually, you know what? Fuck it, I'm out. Like, that's what it looks like, Ash. That's what it looks like, bro. And then also, I'm sorry, I think most people, as much as they were bombed about all this FaZe news, if they actually thought he was joining as the coach at FaZe, I actually think that was even a great brand fit, because the logic was, if FaZe, despite what kyxsan says, if FaZe just refused to buy big names, they actually needed Ash-type guys. The one time in their history where they need some fucker who'll get them a tier 2 Jacob-esque but better player who can actually join the team. I think a lot of people were down for that too. So if it isn't going to be Aurora, as far as I can tell, it is nothing. So we can maybe hope for that. But I also think if it isn't Aurora, then this remains a bad point, because Ash did it to himself, bro. He had so much goodwill, but you got to capitalise it. I made the same point about No Cries. If No Christ didn't get on a team within the first month, then you're never getting on a fucking team. And miss me with these as sub for the BC game, but not playing. Like, that's nothing. Like, if you were
well, look, we don't know if he's not playing yet. So
true, we can't technically know. Maybe they just signed him in case, because obviously you can go to the event carriers. I assume the premise. But the premise is, if you actually were going to ever capitalise, you were going to capitalise in the first month or so. You're not going to 6 months later when everyone's vaguely forgotten all the hype. That's not when it's going to happen, is it? So I do think that part is whack. And also, I just think, like Maui said, I think of all these other teams he could have been on. Like, by the way, I think he would have been a way better signing than Flashy to Liquid. Not to hit on Flashy, just we don't know what the fuck you do, mate. We've seen Ash actually coach. FaZe would have been a good one. There's a bunch of teams out there that he could have put him onto the little name list and considered him. So it feels like, even if he joins Aurora, by the way, how did he let his career get so there's one option left? I feel like he must, in fact, forget even just last year, the last 3 years, ever since basically GamerLegion at the fucking Major in Blast Paris, surely every year 3 or 4 teams would have taken a gamble on this guy. In the past, it might have been a G2, could have been one of the bigger orgs even that did it, but it feels like he let them all go by being loyal, then realised at the end, what am I being loyal for? Like, we're just stuck at this lower level, and even worse now, I've got diminishing opportunity to improve the team because the players I need already go straight to G2. They already go to these other teams, Heroic, etc. Everyone does the Ash GamerLegion playbook at this point in time. So I'm with you. I think it's just bad. It's just a bad.
And I think also like when he re-signed, it was also just kind of like the wording around the re-signing was almost like, you know, he was promised a little bit more or something like that. It was very vague, but like the idea that I got from that re-signing was like, okay, so GamerLegion might be ready to take the step up, you know, and to start investing a little bit more because they were at that like top 10 brink at this point, you know, before the whole ordeal with the offers started happening or where they started replacing Slend and then, you know, Kersey and they couldn't really get the proper offer, which is like, that's effectively what caused Ash's stock to tank because he just couldn't find the offer. Until that point, I think he was very highly regarded for at least by insiders, you know, even if not by the overall community, you know. But even I think in the community, he was still seen as a very successful coach with what he was able to do with what he had in GamerLegion, right? So to me, I thought, okay, that means GamerLegion will sign some bigger players from now on because he's staying on, right? Considering how many different teams could have used a different coach, that didn't happen. So that just stumped me as well.
Also, I'll give you one last angle, which is I had heard one of the reasons he stayed loyal with GamerLegion for so long is, first of all, I heard behind the scenes, I think they did over the years bump his pay up accordingly because he was viewed as the main attraction of the project. But then also, I heard it just within that team, because it was a smaller org, they gave him more of a green light. He sort of got to decide a lot more of like who joins in the way that actually you don't. By the way, even if you people like Saw and G2, there's still some level of org handcuffs of like they'll have some say over who gets to join, or maybe you don't have the budget you always want for the player, etc. But the point is, that only is valuable if you can then sign the players. Like for me, the last player they had that was exciting was the Flammus one, if you remember. And then when he went to like VP, at that point in time, it's like, who even gives a shit anymore? Like at this point, we're just getting bad players. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And it's all falling apart. So no, I think it was just the right time for everyone, bro. It's the right time for everyone to move on. It's also the right time for GamerLegion to just make a real identity. I'll give you the quick example I was going to give. Everyone will obviously say Snappy never should have joined Falcons. I told him privately as a friend, here's why you join Falcons, mate. It's the same analogy as GamerLegion. You might stay and be loyal because currently ENCE is pretty good. But what if ENCE just gets worse? Now you're worse and in a worse org and you don't have the opportunity to leave. Like, that's the problem. If you're at the absolute peak and you're part of the reason why, it's valid for you to say, I'm going to hop to the next better opportunity, and if you're valid as an org, you'll have to build it up without me. And spoiler, how did ENCE do without him? You might not think he did well in Falcons, but ENCE is fucking irrelevant. The joke is they're now a finished team, for fuck's sake. They're not, that whole project is... That may as well never have happened. That was like a fever dream we all had, that they had an international roster where they were making semis of majors. They're not even big majors now. They're not even in the hunt anymore. So I think also that's why you had to leave GamerLegion, bro. You can't be like the one thing propping them up forever. Eventually, when the other players are worse, now you all go downhill again. You're irrelevant. Okay. Now, one thing that Ash thought he learned in GamerLegion, but he was wrong, is that when you are right, you get paid. Well, it turned out, actually, even when he was right, it didn't work in that team. What he should have done is checked out Prize Picks. Because on Prize Picks, if you correctly can decide more or less on the stats projections, then you can win. And did you know, they have all sorts of esports. So as well as if you're in 50 states of the USA, you can play. They also now have stats projections for Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, League of Legends, Valorant, a whole bunch of esports games out there. So just as you'd expect in sports, if you're watching basketball or hockey, they're obviously going to have stuff like points, assists, all the different ones you can have. And you can pick which stats stats you want. You don't have to take one player in every dimension. You pick a player for each one. You can also now do it in esports. You can do first bloods, kills, deaths, etc. And just like with the sports, you can mix up the games. You can take someone from Call of Duty and someone from Counter-Strike and someone from League of Legends, depending on which sports you follow, and make a matchup in your lineup. And obviously the classic thing with prize picks is once you play your first $5 lineup, they give you $50 in lineups. So there's mad value early on. And also, to me, an interesting detail is because there's a bazillion stats projections and all you're doing is picking more or less than the projection, so it'll be like 4 3-pointers made by this player, you can just pick and choose your spot. You can figure out which player you like, which you know about, or if you do it with friends, which one you think could be fun. Like this guy hates Steph Curry, but you think he's better than that. He's going to actually have a little resurgence of form. You think Jokic is underrated. Whatever it might be, there's a way that you can represent there, and they've got a cool social feature where you can actually find other people who have winning lineups, and you can click and copy theirs and just tail them if you want, or you can share your lineups with your friends and show them like, hey, this is what I'm picking for this particular setup. So it's easy. Just go to download the Prize Picks app today and use code SNAKE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code SNAKE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Actually, did just say that at the end of the copy, it just said Prize Picks. Let that simmer for a second. Yeah, anyway, it's okay. The last point of the show, I teased it earlier, but I do think it has to just go in bad. This isn't even ugly, which is the one person, almost inarguably, who has on some level been fucked in the kyxsan to Falcons thing, isn't FaZe, it isn't Twistzz, it isn't Frozen, it's just fucking kyxsan. Like, I'll just point this out to people again. You might not think kyxsan was that great because he didn't win the championship with Nico and Mauisnake. He quite literally, by every definition of how you do this, not only qualified Falcons to the major, but in a very good position, stage 3 of the major. Like, he did, by every single metric that we would have that you earned as an in-game leader of the major. He did it. He earned it. But he's now not only not going to get to play it, but even worse, there are currently 0 rumours that he even gets to join a team in the near future. Like, notice he's not even... By the way, at least... Give me like a fake bullshit overdrive reach around on Twitter/Telegram where you just lie and say he's joining the team. Harumi, where are you, mate? The one time we ever needed you in your completely imaginary fabricated room, just come up with something, bro. Give me some hope, you know. I'm the opposite of Hawkeye. Give me some hope, bro. Just give me some fake hope. I'll go with any of it at this point in time. Because it's crazy. Like I said, even though, like as you said, it was apparently discussed, it was never even actually something that was a report like maybe kyxsan's going the other direction to FaZe. There's nothing when Mouse is doing this move now. The move isn't we thought about bringing kyxsan. No one's even mentioning him. He's actually just seemingly put on a shelf, like I'm scared to say Dexter. He's just on the Dexter shelf now. What, for the next year? It feels like you could. The problem in Falcons is that's the ultimate golden handcuffs, isn't it? You still get paid megabucks. You just don't get to be a professional Counter-Strike player, and you sit there waiting months and months and months. And if everyone knows the Dexter example, as I told him, he didn't even do anything. He didn't do any media. All he did is wait like 8 months and then start doing the odd stream. And I was like, bro, no one's going to tune into your stream and go, sign him. Like, they have to remember you exist. You have to put it out there that you want to join a team. You have to say things like, I'm really motivated. If you're kyxsan, by the way, if you actually listen to this episode, the number one thing you could do is do an interview that doesn't violate your contract. You don't say anything stupid about why you were cut, but just say something along the lines of like, no hard feelings to Falcons. I'm really motivated to play for another team though and build up my career elsewhere and show my style as an. If you do something like that, that's exactly what people want to hear, to know that you're locked in, you're not bombed out by it. Because I actually do think, I'm obviously biased. I would rather see kyxsan play in Falcons. I think you have a better chance to win the major. But I don't think kyxsan was the number one reason why they lost the tournaments. And I certainly don't think, I'm sorry, he's not the reason Nico was choking his tits off in all those fucking games or that Mauisnake went missing. Like, that's not his fault. And also, he didn't, as far as I know, make fucking Zonic sign Kiyasuke, give him fucking Nico's roles, and then tell Twistzz, play the most inappropriate role for you in the game. He didn't do any of those things. Like, kyxsan had to just sit there and take all of that. So I think he has been hard done. So I'm just going to say, the idea he has nowhere to go, I think is just bad. Striker, where you at on this?
Yeah, I thought, you know, when the mouse thing happened, I was like, that's crazy that wasn't at least like the first option or like an idea or something like that. You know, who knows? Like maybe they will see in these next couple of events and they'll see like at the mid-season that, okay, maybe we should get a different IGL than Zershan, you know, who's maybe not cut out to be like a full-on in-game leader. Maybe there's still a world where that happens. I don't know. But yeah, again, I never heard anything of the sort. Same as you. There's like nothing. There's not been a peep other than the potential of that have been a swap, you know, with kyxsan, with FaZe happening. Obviously, that's still a door down the line, like in the mid-season, you know, when he sees all the options. It could just be him looking at options at this point, because it would be kind of stupid to commit to anything right in this moment before the major happens, before we see how everybody else falls, right? Because there were a lot of rumors around Alexi, with that whole Aurora thing, that until they improved, there was a reasonable possibility that he would be the one out. Maybe kyxsan would have been a pretty decent replacement there, right? Like, kind of take your pick, right? Let's say G2 don't really believe in Hunter as the in-game leader. That's another potential improvement for them to go for like a proper in-game leader that's been growing into the role rather than took it up late into his career because he had to effectively. So like I can definitely see hope for him at the midseason, at the offseason when a lot of these teams will probably reevaluate their rosters. But I do think it is a bit concerning that we haven't heard anything so far.
It's it is because I'd made a IGL ranking list for last year, and things change a little bit, obviously, with the 4 months that have been played so far of 2026. But last year, I ranked kyxsan as my 4th best in-game leader, and people could take gripes with the methodology, but generally speaking, even the people that read that and YouTube in the YouTube comments, they more or less were just like, "Ooh, I think he should be one lower."
Okay.
It wasn't that he's just way too high. Okay. It wasn't that he's like, 10 spots too high or anything like that. It's just that people thought I had him above Blitz, and I get why people would really like Blitz. I mean, he's a fragging in-game leader. It's like a underdog team. But when I looked at some of the numbers of just like one number that I actually use, which it's not a perfect methodology, or not a perfect stat by any means, but it's a cool metric that I feel like gives some indication for how strong an in-game leader is compare their CT sides win percentage versus their T sides win percentage. And of IGLs that I ranked in the top 20, kyxsan was the 6th best in that metric. Obviously, there's a lot to take into account there, but if I see an IGL has a very bad T side win rate, despite the fact that their CT side win rate is very good, I can make a pretty loose assumption there that they're probably not getting the most out of their pieces, which are actually quite strong, good enough to hold their own in terms of bomb site defenses, which to me are a bit more individually focused. So I would be surprised if kyxsan doesn't end up anywhere by the end of the major. It's definitely a bad point because he should be playing in the major to do as well as he did for Falcons, to aid them in qualifying for stage 3. I mean, the amount of I hope that there's some sort of clause for him in order to get some money out of that for the sticker money that he helped earn them, because stage 3 capsules are probably going to do some of the best, or whatever they call them.
They always do, yeah.
Yeah, they always make a ton of money on that. And and sticker money is one of the biggest earners for players, sometimes even more so than prize money for the year, depending on who the team is. So if he doesn't get some, and it's funny, obviously, it's almost ironic that, the one team that might have messed him up in terms of money might be Falcons, who probably paid him the highest salary that he's ever had in his career and probably ever will. But it's just that it's just kind of shitty that he's been done dirty in this kind of fashion, when I'd say that all of his skills, the way that the T sides have come together, have all actually shown that he is more than a competent and capable in-game leader. And also, I'll even just bring up the fact that like his CT fragging is weirdly it's very good. Like for IGL, in the IGL role and playing the bad position on every single map. I don't think he has a single position on any map where I can point to it and say, oh, that's not the worst rifle position possible. He is surprisingly very capable. So I'm pulling for kyxsan to get back onto a good team, because I think he's definitely earned the respect that should merit his inclusion to like a top 12 roster minimum.
He's in such a good position, man, that it's so easy to hate on everybody else on that roster, maybe apart from Twistzz. That's like he's never going to be hated in that team, because there's like what I see. There's Nico, there's kyxsan, kyxsan with his playoff problems, Nico with his major, choking, all these things, and then Mauisnake being kind of like either you're a big fan of him or you're not. You're a fan of one of the other big two, So for kyxsan, it's not such a bad position to be in, Nobody's going to be like, oh, this guy fucking sucks. No.
Also, if he actually joins, I'll say this is the last point of the show. If he actually joins the competent roster, he will get this way to Paravision effect. And people will pull for him to beat Falcons. They'll want to do this whole, like, you were wrong and you fucked this guy over. That's like a classic, like, what would you call it? Like, resentment grievance that people love to play on because it's a soap opera angle, isn't it? Like, your ex fucking got back at you. So I even think he's going to actually have a crazy pop if he ended up joining, like, a G2 type team that we're talking about. He could actually have, like, a massive upside, a Liquid. Surely they're another one that should be in the mix, etc.